I'm Michael Abels. The time now is 4:01.
She great classes of
Are you easing into it?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good job. No.
Today is January the 28th. This is the Salina City Commission meeting. Would the clerk please call it to order?
Mayor Jennings.
Here.
Commissioner Angel.
Here.
Commissioner Crawford.
Here.
Commissioner Householder.
Here.
Commissioner Shirley.
Here.
Would those that are able please join us in for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We start our meeting with the citizens forum. If we have any citizens that would like to address the commission with something that's not on the agenda, please come forward, state your name and your address.
Yes, I'm John Price, 1305 Wayne, Salina, Kansas. And I want to address a little bit about our health department and what happened to our pretty light.
The what?
Pretty light over here a little bit ago. Oh, there it is back there, yeah. Well, anyway, I wanted to, I've got some open public records here that I wanted to hand out to each one of the commissioners if I could, so you can take it home and look at them.
Thanks, John.
Because you're real hard to get a hold of. I've got to see you once. I've never really met Norm.
John, how are you? Nice to meet you.
And
Thank you,
got to see you on
Commissioner.
the street corner one
Yeah,
time.
out in the
didn't I?
parking lot.
What?
Hey,
What?
I see you.
Out in the parking lot, not on the street.
You see me everywhere.
That's not
Where are we going with this? Yeah. I know it only pays $3,600 a year, but come on.
Well,
parking lot. Parking lot.
Parking lot, okay.
well, anyway. Right here. On that, I thought I had another one or two. But on that first paper, that's a picture of the roof. And it looks really good, the roof does, when you get on top. It's a very nice looking roof. The problem is it is condemned. The building is in drastic need, and I think there you might see that Jason brought us a letter, and one of the important things is the understanding between the city and the county. And it's there, and you can read that, and I'm sure you've read it, but Dennis Kissinger signed this. Would you ever sign something like this? That guy must have been crazy to sign this. You know, I wouldn't want to get tied into an agreement like this. It's a tough agreement. And it goes to Exhibit A, which about the third page there after the building insurance on the property at Salina, Kansas, that is to be maintained by the city of Salina. And of course, the contents is to be by the health department. So the city of Salina takes care of the insurance. Now we seem to have a problem. I don't really know all this, and I'm just coming as a citizen here talking about this. We have a problem with the health insurance wanting to pay for the building. Is that correct? Because of structural problems?
Yeah, I can say that we checked, and at this point, they don't believe there's a claim that they could pay on.
Okay.
I can't say if that's final, but that's
Right.
the information provided.
Well, it's been 9 months almost, so we need to get something finalized, I think. And so I want you to read through that. And at the first, there's in 1962 when they bought the building. Let me see, the architect services looked it over, and You can read all those things that they said about the building in '92. They said the roof system may be required, some more patching done on top or replacement for the roof. But in the summary there, it says the building is good condition with some modifications. So, of course, the city and the county thought they bought a building with pretty good conditions. And they gave an estimate of the cost there. And that was, I'm not here to talk about who did anything or anything. I just want to explain what was done. An architect looked at it, and after the work was all done, they worked on the building. It says on the roof, there on the architect's page, it says that they did. Additional bracing was agreed, consisting of 2x and X bracing at points of each truss, between the bottom and each truss. And he says, I've advised the contractors the above described work has been completed, and the letter you requested shall make an inspection of the work, confirm the work done according to the instructions given. That was by an architect. We move up here to 2012. If you can find that on there. And it was in, this was the year, yeah, this is 2012 after we've had the problems. And this is a letter to Mr. Brian Erickson. Is he here? Anyway, we get down there. It says many issues of the barrel trusses were found. Cracks were found in several trusses. Repairs have been made to some of the cords, but do not appear to be engineered. But do not appear to have been engineered and are inadequate. The members of the bowings and the proportions have been removed in some locations. These trusses do not have adequate lateral bracing and swaying in the plane and the truss, and the rotation in some places, vertical deflections up to 6 inches. The men stand were measured. Well, that's pretty bad. And it goes on, talks about the main problem of that building is the support columns from the south end of the north building. There's 3 buildings there. So the south end, the north column, and then the middle end, the south column. So that hallway where you walk through, that's where quite a bit, that's where the main structural damage is. And we'll turn over to page 2, and it says that the mansard on the west side of the building was poorly installed. Well, I agree with that. The neighbor next door, he just spent $6,000 getting his attached right so it wouldn't fall off. And so that's probably why they need those barricades there right now to keep, if that would fall off, that wouldn't, and fall on somebody, that wouldn't be good. So he spent about $6,000 fixing his. We've got about 3 times the size of that, so it'd probably take $15,000 to get that secured. I think it looks pretty poor to the city to have people walking by and have to get off the sidewalk and go out in the street. And here the other day, I was over there, and the lady, somebody had knocked the barricade down, and she was stepping over and pushing a baby cart over it, and about tripped. And I think we really need to look at that and get that a little more secure or something, or get it secured above. It said it'd be expensive to repair the building, and whether this building is worth repairing is questionable. If the building is repaired, new column supports will probably be required, the midspan of each truss, so on and so on. This is by a structural engineer. And then on the next page, it says that they need to remove the contents. They gave them a certain, it needs to be, they need to get out of the building. And we remember that time, not a good time for the health department. Then on this notice and order to abate dangerous structures, you can read all that. I just want to give you all this information so you can take it home and look at it. The building official said, vacate the building as soon as possible and have all contents removed by June 15th, 2012. No one can be in the building when excess is 45 miles an hour. No occupancy should be allowed after June 15th, 2012. And then apply for a building permit to repair or demolish the building by July the 15th. Complete the repairs or demolished by September the 30th. So this building's right on the edge of being demolished. Isn't that correct? I mean, And then I added the building permits, the work that was done on it. And in '94, the engineers, all remodeling work, and when they took the inside out and they made it into the health center, the work will include construction of new partitions, interior finish, plumbing, mechanical, electrical work. I've had people say that the electrical and stuff in that building is bad. I don't think that's true. I think that there's some old things that are hanging in the ceiling when it was JJ Chevrolet, like pull cords. Remember how you used to turn on the lights? They never removed that stuff, but it's not hooked up. And I don't think the electrical is that bad in that building. But but anyway, if you notice there's a contractor that did the work, there was an architect that did the designing, and there was an engineer also that signed it off. So we've had engineers all down the line here. Matter of fact, I think 4 different engineers that I've seen have signed it off. Then on the next page, they did some more work, remodeled again, spent $35,000. By the way, the first work they did on that building was $348,660. Well, they spent a lot of money on that building. Isn't that a lot of money? I mean, that was in '94. So I don't know what that'd be like now, but it's certainly a lot of money. And then they did some more remodeling with that permit. No engineer needed on that job. Go to the next one. And I kept this to a very minimum. If you look at the next job, or the next one, let's go on to the next one after that. After they did all that work, there was a certificate of completion done by the city that all the work was done, and that job was in '08. Turning over to the date 4/13/09. Have you everybody got that in there? 4/13/09. It's which would have been. Well, it'd be less than 3 years ago. They did quite a bit of work. They installed 5 air conditioners on the roof, and there's some pictures of those on your front. And those air conditioners are about this high. Then under the air conditioners, they made some catwalks and some stairs and a place to put the other part of the air conditioners there. So that work was done in 4/13/09. And as you notice there, who the contractor was, but they had somebody do the other work. And Jim, well, you see the engineer there. And take a note and keep in mind of that engineer there. That engineer happens to come back to the engineer that closed the building down 3.5 years after the work was done. Well, actually, not even that, because it was about 3 years. So, and you can see there's fresh problems up there. Framework of roof and 5 air conditioning units was one of the building permits by the same engineer. Then they remodeled the roof. They filled. Does anybody remember that skylight? I hardly remember that. There's a skylight in there.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and I've got some pictures of that, but this big skylight, and they built that in there before. I'd like to find out, but I can't get the records on it yet. But I think they built that probably in '88 or something before we bought it. I'd like to see, but anyway, they covered that up, and they added the access ladder and the works, and that was done in, well, the building permit was in 5/20/09. Then one of the last papers I put in here was, and that was signed off by an engineer also, another engineer here in town. And then I think on that last one there, the architect, it points down that he was the engineer and who the pretty reliable contractor did the work. And then it was signed off, another certificate. So I want you to look at that, and I really think the insurance company should pay for this building. the repairs. And I think if there's a problem with the engineering or any other problems, the insurance company should collect that. But, you know, I know Kay and Aaron are really on board to get a building for these people. And it's really a very important thing, and I'm sure, I haven't talked to the rest of you, but my grandmother, they used to come out, she was 90-some years old, and take a crane and lift her out of bed and go give her a shower and a bath, and they do some, I mean, we need the health department, more than we need lights, more than we need a lot of things. So I think this is a #1 priority that we're working on. I can't talk to the county commissioners about this because of the quorum. We only have 3, but we'll be talking about it tomorrow. But I wanted to present it with you guys because I didn't want to wait another week to do it. I mean, we need to get on this and get something done. So maybe there'll be a time when we can all get together and discuss this and move along with this. And then get you guys out from underneath all this memorandum. That's just crazy. I mean, I don't agree with that. They drug in that a long time, and I don't think you like it too well. And I wouldn't like it. It's a plus for the county. But you know, we all live in the county, so it's all our health. It's not just about who's county and who's city. We all pay county taxes. We pay city taxes. We pay real estate taxes. It's all our money, so we need to get together and get it straightened out, and as fast as possible. So, is there any questions? Do you agree that we need to get this done?
Well, we've been actively pushing on it. I know that you're new to the commission, but the community would have the essence that the city commission is just sitting on their hands, and we've made numerous attempts well above and beyond, and no matter whether citizens say, well, maintenance isn't replacing structural, we've said that we want to get moving forward, we want to do things. To the extent of, you know, we understand we're not the owners of the building,
right? And
we understand we didn't buy the building, so we didn't have to hire a structural engineer to go and look at it. And your points are very good about the fact that there were engineers hired all along. I'm sure an engineer that was hired to secure air conditioners designed this framework for the air conditioners. But I didn't see another point in time where they had hired an engineer to do a structural analysis of the building. I think the only time that was done was recently when there was really big problems. And unfortunately, we've inherited the fact that there was an architect that looked at it and not a structural engineer in the beginning. So I don't think
but there was when you look at those papers, you'll find that the same guy that says the building needs tore down was the one that put the framework for those air conditioners. And if you look on your page of where the air conditioners are, there's a V roof that was put on here. That had a lot of weight, plus there was a lot of these things that made the water run to the front, and that's a lot of weight. And then plus they had that thing that they capped off, which I don't know why they just don't remove all that weight instead of keep adding weight. And then they put those 2 big air conditioners right where the problem's at. Pretty obvious the problem. It's the weight loads over, and the air conditioners just probably finished it off, and maybe a little snow in the last couple of years. And what if we'd had a big snow and something would go on boom? So it's anyway.
So the county's position is the air conditioners are what caused the roof to fail?
Well, and all the extra roofing they put on it. And if, in other words, here's a barrel roof here and here's a barrel roof here, they build a roof like this between it, and all that weight is pushing down, or they build a pointed roof, and that weight is pushing down along both sides of those walls that they said that are where the main problem is. And then in some time or another, this stuff was removed in there. When you start removing stuff, you lose the structure of those barrels, you know, of those trusses. I personally, I'm just a farm boy, but I think the place could be repaired, and I think we need to look at that. And we need to either that, or we need to look at another building. We've had a couple other sites that they've gone and looked at, but we need to move along on this, even if they have to fight it out with the insurance and stuff later on. We need to get we need to get things rolling, and I think we all the commissioners, county and city need to get together and talk about it.
Well, and you've got on here the things to consider and research if the health department becomes a county department. Is that a proposal from the county?
Somebody put that in there. I didn't write that myself. And if the county and the city, if they don't work together, there wouldn't be nearly the funds, and we'd probably have to, if it was just the county, we'd have to probably go to a lot less employees, and I don't think we don't want that either.
Okay.
And we don't know what's going to happen with Obamacare, and I mean, we're in an area of time where we just don't know we're in a turmoil, you know.
I was under the impression the county had quoted in the newspaper they raised their mill levy to accommodate future health department
Well,
issues.
they've got aside $500,000 to get started on this building. And then the health department, I'm not going to reveal what they've got, but they've got some money aside, and I'm sure we all want to get started on it. But I really feel that, how much insurance do we pay a year to Sunflower Insurance? Would it be in the tens of thousands of dollars or in the hundreds of thousands of dollars? So we've been paying a lot of insurance in, and I think they need to step up and do something about this building.
Have you looked at the policy? Does it cover
I've got
the
it,
situation?
yes, I've got the policy, and I called them and asked them that I could talk to the insurance adjuster, and he hasn't called me back yet.
Has the county put a claim in?
It's not the county, it's the cities.
I thought the building was owned by the county.
It
Does
is,
the county not
The
insure?
county, the I didn't bring the insurance policy, but it's included with the city has over 300, almost 300 structures or buildings that they insure. Isn't that right?
We have a lot. I don't know the number.
It's about 300. I count.
So the county owns the building but doesn't insure it at all?
No, in your memorandum it says that
The city
yeah, and
provides
it's
the
in the
insurance?
insurance policy. I looked at it.
And we've maintained that insurance,
Yeah.
right? We haven't let it lapse.
Not to my knowledge. And for clarification, I do, in fairness, the Sunflower Insurance folks who are now insurance partners are the broker of the insurance and not the actual policy owner. That would be Travelers.
Travelers
So,
Insurance,
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that Travelers Insurance is the company, which is a big, very big company.
Yeah, and again, we're all speculating here, and I just want to say I'm glad you guys are interested in getting this done. I think the new commission is going to be easy to work with. I think that's been part of our holdup before, is we feel like we've made some efforts.
Yeah.
We feel like your predecessors were not maybe working in an equal capacity, so I applaud your desire to move this forward and so we can move on to bigger and better things. But on the insurance aspect of it, again, I'm not an adjuster. I thankfully rarely have ever needed insurance. But my thoughts are, if the insurance company determines that it's a predetermined issue, maybe you guys have faced this before, that may be why they're deciding, hey, we're not going to
Insurance
pay.
companies don't want to pay big claims like this.
Well, sure. Well, of course, that's the given, but
And, but, I mean, without a doubt, the paperwork I've given you, it has been architects, engineers, it's been looked at all the way through. One of the stories I keep hearing from people is the electrical and the plumbing's terrible there. It's in excellent shape. It's in wonderful shape. There's not a lot, I mean, why didn't they take the old cords out and the old fluorescent lights up in the ceiling? Because they didn't have to back then, and they still maybe don't have to, but why wouldn't you? It's weight, it doesn't look good, but that doesn't mean the electrical, and I know the electrical companies that worked on that are very reliable companies, and they're not going to do bad. I mean, you just go look at the boxes and everything that's in there. It looks brand new. All the electrical looks new, and the building looks new. I was amazed. We've been told that the fire department did a lot of damage in there. They laid boards down on the floor and put other boards on there. You could take that all out, and there wouldn't be a mark on there, and put some ceiling tiles back in. It wouldn't take a lot to put that building back together.
my concerns are, as far as rebuilding the building, I make no secret of it when we do discuss it. And
Well, I'm not even to that point.
Yeah, and you know, you and I have discussed it just privately as two mates, you know, out and about. But my concern is it was that it was becoming. My understanding is that it was basically becoming inadequate for the health department anyway, that they had grown and their needs had maybe changed. And so my concern all along has been, as a commissioner and as a citizen, is that that maybe it no longer fits our needs, and that's my problem with maybe going forward and fixing it, but that's maybe another
Doesn't mean we
discussion.
shouldn't collect the money for this building, and it
If
could
it's
be.
And this is-
possible.
This is
Yeah.
really a discussion for
Yeah.
another time, but
Yeah.
the information I really appreciate.
Is good,
Okay.
yeah.
And I think you have 5 commissioners that want to move forward on it, and
And we got 3
we
engineers, too,
we
so-
have a regulatory role because of the structure
Right.
of the building
Right.
in order to move
Right.
forward. So we wear both of those hats, where we've been trying to get to a
Well-
solution, and then we have a regulatory responsibility.
I think a lot of people I've talked to do not realize that the city of Salina holds insurance on that building. I don't think a lot of the commissioners even know it. One of our main ladies upstairs, she didn't know it.
Yeah,
Did you know it, Aaron?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
So it's, there's a lot of things we really need to get together and discuss and get it on the move. I mean, pronto. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Other citizens with comments today? Sir, if you'd state your name and address for the record.
John Bozen, 1373 Eagle Crest in Salina. Appreciate the opportunity to address the commission, Mr. Mayor, commissioners. I have a public health issue that I'm sure you're familiar with the information that's been given to you about water fluoridation. And in my personal opinion, and in the opinion of quite a number of citizens, fluoridation of Salina's water supply is a public health hazard. And I personally object to it, and I'm not consenting any longer to to being exposed to this toxic poison. And so whatever needs to be done within the system and within the rules to get this stopped, we're going outside Salina now, so we're bringing people in. This has gone on long enough. You've had 45 years of people objecting to it, and it continues to be a thorn in the side of people all over the world. It's unsafe. Fluoridation is unsafe and ineffective, and it needs to be stopped now. Fluoride is a poison. There's no other way to describe it. You wouldn't have the warning on your toothpaste or your mouthwash if it has fluoride in it. The dentist wouldn't be warning you not to put fluoridated water in the baby's infant formula. There's trouble with hip fractures in seniors. Anyone with diabetes or arthritis or kidney problems has to be careful not to ingest fluoride. So there's just a host of hazards and dangers with it. And I would ask that you please stop dragging your feet and just issue the order to close down water fluoridation of the Salina municipal water system. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments?
Hi, Lou Tryon, 2122 Leland Way. I am with Salina Cares. It is a group that wants to get the fluoride out of the Salina water. It is a hazardous waste and a toxin, and I wanted to read some things today to show you just how toxic that really is. I got this information from the Fluoride Deception book. It says, fluoride is so muscular a chemical that it has become a lifeblood of modern industry, pumped hotly each day through innumerable factories, refineries, and mills. Fluoride is used to produce high-octane gasoline, to smelt such key metals as aluminum and steel, to enrich uranium, to make computer circuit boards, pesticides, ski wax, refrigerant gases, Teflon plastic, carpets, waterproof clothing, etched glass, bricks, and ceramics, and numerous drugs such as Prozac and Cipro. Historians have failed to record that fluoride pollution was the biggest single legal worry facing the atomic bomb program following World War II. Environmentalists are often unaware that since World War II, fluoride has been the most damning poison spilling from factory smokestacks and was, at one point during the Cold War, blamed for more damage claims against industry than all 20 other major air pollutants combined. And it was fluoride that may have been primarily responsible for the most notorious pollution disaster in U.S. history, the 1948 Halloween nightmare that devastated the mill town of Donora, Pennsylvania, which jump-started the U.S. environmental movements. We would also like to invite you to come to our fluoride meeting so that you can get more information and learn. You know that Wichita turned down the chance to have fluoridation by 60% margin. They learned, they got educated, so can you. We're having another meeting on Thursday this week, January the 31st. We're having a special speaker, Dr. Albert Bergstaller, who is a chemist emeritus from KU, and he's going to speak a little bit, along with 3 other people. He's going to tell his personal account of how fluoride really ruined his health, and how he then, after he got his health back, he put fluoride back into his eating habits, and all of his symptoms came back again. So that's one way to prove that fluoride is damaging, and it is a definite toxin. So if you can please come at 7 o'clock to the Salina Public Library, Prescott Room, 7 to 9, this Thursday night. Come and learn and have an open mind and get educated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens that would like to come before the commission?
I'm Barbara Young, president of Triad Manufacturing, and also volunteer president with North Salina Community Development. And I just wanted to fill you in on a rally we had last Wednesday at the old East Iron Dillon's parking lot to see if we can get another grocery store in there. And I have in my hand approximately 900 signatures. Wow. And there's more out there, approximately 200 pages. And just to let you know, there's a real groundswell of support, a lot of enthusiasm. I want to give props to the Salina Chamber, downtown Salina, John Blanchard and Greg Stevens, who kind of spearheaded the effort for North Salina. I think this is real indicative of the emotional issue that has become, and I think there's a real groundswell for something to go in. I think that this is a real good pledge for people to say, okay, I will support this, and it shows any potential person coming in to open a store that there's definitely support. This is an issue that has affected North Salina. Now that the Dillon store closed on East Iron, that line is slowly moving south, and so it's an issue that affects all of Salina. And so hopefully if we can get this done, it strengthens the community as a whole. And so I'd like to give props to Greg and John, who are here. And I didn't know if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, ma'am.
I was going to say maybe next week, you say you've got about 200 more out there?
Right. We're going to run it for 2 weeks. We had 300 signatures in the 45 minutes we were in the parking lot.
Wow. It was, what kind of comments and stuff? Of course, the typical, we want this grocery store back, and
yeah.
Any suggestions or anything from people, thoughts, or?
It's just that
Food,
the convenience.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, everything. The convenience. We had a lot of people that were on scooters, a lot of elderly, that it's definitely impacted them. And I think this kind of showed when we had this rally. People were lined up in the general vicinity, and people came by, driving by, were honking.
Sure.
Just definitely overall very enthusiastic, and it's been a real collaboration with, like I mentioned, with the Chamber in downtown and North Salina to try to get the ball rolling and see if we can't get an individual.
I was going to say, maybe when you get all those signatures, come back and sort of let us know, just so so it's nice
Sure.
to hear. I think the
We'd
public
glad
needs to know that there is support, and if people want to sign up that are watching at home, where some places they could go,
They
maybe?
can go to Ad Astra or the Three Mochas. We also have individuals that are taking these around
To
town
workplaces
also.
and things?
I also have 144 likes on Facebook. There's a Facebook page for that, too.
Good.
Barb, I was at the rally, and because my mother traded it at that store down there, and I traded also there, I really appreciate the fact that North Salina got this all together, and John helped with that because I think it's really needed down there. I noticed many, many wheelchairs and scooters, as you said. There's several elderly housing complexes down there. And it was cold that night, very cold.
It was real cold and real windy.
Right. So thank you very much.
Has there been any thoughts, just one thing, you know, I just was kind of brainstorming myself today with trying to tie, you know, I'm just thinking of other angles that may help, and I don't want to get too much into that here, but just, I was thinking about our Prairie Land Market, you know, if the grocer feels maybe it's too big of a building, has there been talk of maybe going into business with the Prairie Land Market on one side and maybe selling some local meats from, I know Don Wagner raises, you know, big things with horns, some kind of cow, whatever, but you can eat them, I think. And then, but he, you know, selling his meat.
Yeah,
whatever they are. Maybe they're for show, maybe you don't eat them, maybe they're just to look at. But I'd eat them. They'd eat me probably. But yeah, I mean, something along those lines to maybe encourage the grocer to, you know, maybe he doesn't want that much space. I don't know what the process is. But
This been kicked around to maybe if that is if it's too big, maybe like a food mall or, you know, something where it's divided up, that's a possibility. I believe there's 15,000 square feet on the main level, and then there's a full basement also.
Oh, wow.
So there's quite a bit of space there.
Well, yeah, I just say for me personally, I mean, I just think it'd be good for the people at home to see if you get those numbers maybe next week, come back and fill us in, let us know how it's going. So.
Be glad to.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, just to add on to that a little bit too, for those who don't understand how economic development works, because a lot of folks think that the city either brings people in or pushes them out, depending on what we want, when in fact we know that the business person decides if they want to be here based on strength of the market and whether primarily whether they can be profitable.
Sure.
Well, with that in mind, I want to acknowledge that the Chamber is working extremely hard to market this building to other grocers that would hopefully fit in that and deserve some recognition for that.
Good.
Thank you, Dennis.
He's back there for you people at home.
He's listening back there.
Do we have any other citizens that would like to come before the commission? Seeing none, we'll move ahead. Today we have no awards and proclamations, so that moves us into public hearings.
Item 5.1, public hearing and report on petition number 4353, requesting vacation of 30 feet of platted restricted access on Lot 3, Block 2 of the Riffle Addition, plus the abutting vacated right-of-way to allow a right-in, right-out driveway opening on the west side of South 9th Street, a distance of 515 feet south of Schilling Road. Sub-item 5.1A, first reading ordinance number 1010672.
I'll open the public hearing on this matter and turn it over to staff. Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a public hearing and a report on a petition that's filed by Mr. John Hendricks on behalf of Prima Brothers Properties. And the property that we are discussing is located right here on Lot 3, Block 2 in the Riffle Addition. And the history of the Riffle Addition goes back to 1997. At that time, Mr. Riffle platted this area into 12 commercial lots, and the plat layout provided for a access on Schilling Road where there was an existing access opening which lines up with the Walmart opening across the street. And then a new public street, Riffle Drive, was constructed from this point south, and then it curved east over to South 9th Street. And the way this was laid out was that all access to the lots would be internal with restricted access along the remaining Schilling Road and South 9th Street frontage. In 1999, 2 years later, a vacation of a former KDOT frontage road occurred, and what that did was it added some depth to these lots along there. Before this was developed, there was a frontage road that ran along here down to a farmhouse, and that was vacated, abandoned by KDOT, and ended up back in private hands, but the restricted access was retained at that time. And so there have been 8 site plans for development submitted in this development, and they've either been on the west side of Riffle Drive or the ones that abut 9th Street have all been approved with their access on Riffle Drive only, with no access on 9th Street, and that includes the Popeyes restaurant site where a site plan was approved in 2006 And you have a 30 by 76 foot building. It has 2 driveways, both of which connect to Riffle Drive, and you have a circulation pattern there. The restaurant opened in 2007 and was only open for about a year, and then it closed and was later foreclosed upon by a bank. It's now been purchased by Premier Brothers, and they have plans to remove the existing Popeyes restaurant building and redevelop the site. And their plans are either a new retail building or possibly a relocation of the Coyote Canyon restaurant to this site. And they met with the city's development review team and indicated to staff that having a driveway on 9th Street would be advantageous to their plans for redeveloping the property. So the process of requesting a break in restricted access was explained. This petition was filed in early January. A public hearing was scheduled, and it's being held today. And so what the request is, which is, this is a survey that depicts it. It's rather hard to see, but this doesn't exist today. They're proposing to construct a deceleration lane, a 30-foot driveway opening on 9th Street that would cross a 5-foot concrete sidewalk that's out there and a roadside drainage ditch. And then it would come across the property and intersect with Riffle Drive. It doesn't quite match up with the existing curb cut. It would be about 8 to 10 feet south of where the existing entrance is. So there's a statutory process for vacating restricted access. It involves public notice, a public hearing, and if approved, the adoption of a vacation ordinance. And we've explained to you on this case, and any time that we have a plat or development before you on an arterial street, that restricted access is often put in place to limit the number of curb cuts and turning points on arterial streets that either have a high traffic volume or are expected to have that in the future. And so where we have that in place, the city's policy has been to encourage lots facing arterial streets to obtain access from the nearest available side street where possible. So you could almost look at Riffle Drive as being platted as a frontage road. It was specifically platted to provide access to the individual lots there so that there would be no direct access to Schilling or 9th Street. And in your packets we have a map. Again, it was rather small scale, but it starts at Cloud and itemizes all the access points from Cloud south to south of Schilling Road, and identified to you whether those are private driveways, shared drives, or public streets. But the first origin of access control on South 9th Street was through KDOT, and when KDOT is acquiring right-of-way for highways, they will often buy right-of-way, and then they'll also buy access control. So when the South View Plaza, where Genesis is located, that was a KDOT jurisdiction road, and KDOT limited that shopping center to the 2 access points that you see today. After the city took over responsibility for 9th Street, we have primarily carried that out through the platting process. So as you move south on 9th Street, you'll see closer to Central Mall, where we have frontage roads that parallel 9th Street very closely, and those frontage roads provide access to the individual parcels. In the 1990s, it was identified that those frontage roads were awfully close to 9th Street. There were stacking space problems at intersections, and so then the movement was to take the frontage roads, move them away from 9th Street, and have the outlots back up to 9th Street. So as you go south and you see Applebee's, Red Lobster, and Pizza Hut with Marketplace, you see Planet Avenue with Longhorn Steakhouse and Subway and Spangles and Burger King. Those lots have frontage on 9th Street but no direct access, and that's the same concept in Riffle Drive. So for identification purposes, a private driveway is simply that, a driveway that comes off the street and serves a parking lot for an individual business. We also have a number of shared access drives that either provide access to more than one property or are simply a road that connects to a frontage road or ring road, and then we have public streets. So we have identified those for you on the map in the packet, and the example across the street, these are shared access roads or access easements that the developer of the Lowe's Auburndale complex has done, and so he has dedicated access easements here and here, which are private, but they are solely for the purpose of a roadway that connects the ring road here with 9th Street. And so the characteristics of those is that they serve multiple properties. They connect a public street to a ring road or frontage road. They are usually in a public access easement, so they're available to the public, and they don't go through parking lots. They are for moving traffic and are therefore delineated by curb and gutter or some other barrier. So if you drive down 9th Street, you'll see Suburban Appliance and Carmelita's Mexican Market, and farther south, America's Best Value Inn have individual driveway entrances that probably date back 50 years. And then you have the Dooley Pumpkin Patch, which that is the sole driveway to that property approved by KDOT, and then Fountain Plaza, which has its own driveway north of Brown Mackey. Walmart, Long MacArthur, Marshalls have private entrances that were approved through the platting process, but that was partially the result. There was no ring road or internal road to connect to, so they have an individual connection. So in our research, we identified 2 access points on South 9th Street that were approved under a similar process. Both of them occurred in 1997 and occurred when part of 9th Street was being redeveloped with median improvements. One is right south of Casey's Car Wash and General Store, and it is a right-in, right-out interior road that leads to Mid-State Plaza. And the other was a new access break that serves Tucson's, Dell's Electronics, and Country Inn and Suites. But neither of these were curb cuts for a driveway that served an individual business or lot. So John, if you could go back to the drawing that was submitted, the site survey. This is the plan that was submitted and has been reviewed by staff. And it's difficult to see, but there is a high-pressure gas line that goes right through here, which makes that an unbuildable area. So any building that's placed on this property is going to have to be on the north side. Then they're proposing a connection here that would go through the property. And we have taken note of the fact that it does connect 9th Street to Riffle Drive. But due to its location and its configuration and the lack of detail that we have about how it would be designed and constructed, staff is not able to conclude from the information we have that it would be a shared access drive or public access easement similar to others that have been approved. And so as we expressed at the Development Review Team meeting and again today, we would be supportive of a public street that would connect 9th Street to Riffle Drive. We would be supportive of a public or at least a private street or of a similar design to what you have across the street on the Lowe's development. But we cannot, as staff, support a driveway that would simply serve a parking lot for a new development on this site. And if that were approved, then we believe it would set an unfavorable precedent for Quick Shop or Wendy's or the Taco Bueno site to request their own driveway on 9th Street. And then if you look across the street, there are outlots over there as well that back up to 9th Street that are vacant. In their information, the petitioners cite the right-in, right-out entrance south of Casey's. They also cite the right-in, right-out on the east side of 9th across the street. And what staff would point out is that these were designed and built as private roads, not as parking lot driving aisles. So they've got curb and gutter, and you do not drive through the Dimaru Steakhouse parking lot when you come off 9th Street. You drive on a road that connects 9th with the Ring Road, and there's a curb cut there for Dimaru. And so, because this is a permanent decision that would run with the land, we believe that additional design details confirming the proposed access point, confirming that it would be designed and function as a private roadway and not just as an individual driveway, needs to be provided by the petitioner before there's action on their request. And if they are willing to consider that and modify their design to provide those details, our recommendation would be option 3 on page 6 of your report, which would be to direct the petitioner to modify their plan to either redesign or relocate the driveway so it would function as a true shared access drive and not just as a driveway serving an individual business parking lot. And to do that, you would need to continue the public hearing to a specified meeting date to allow that design to be considered. There is an ordinance that is attached to your packet there. That ordinance does not contain any findings. If there were action that you might wish to take today, this is a quasi-judicial land use matter, and you would have an opportunity to recess into closed session with Mr. Bankston to develop findings to support any action you would take today. But if the applicant petitioner is willing and to consider going back and providing either a redesign or more specific details to confirm that this would in fact be a comparable roadway to what you have south of Casey's and across the street, then we would recommend continuing the public hearing on this to allow that to occur. We collaborated with the engineering department on this and putting together some of the information. One thing I forgot to note that I made a note of was that there was City Commission discussion in February 2010 where there was a proposal to extend a median across the opening of Riffle Drive and Schilling Road to prevent the left-hand turns, but that was not exercised, and the left-hand turn option is still available there. So traffic on Schilling can turn left into Riffle Drive as originally envisioned. So with that, I'd be open to any questions about the options in the report. Ken Wasserman is representing the petitioner, and he is here today if you have questions of him.
Any questions of staff?
Should the commission decide on option 3, what kind of timeline would staff be looking at for the future meeting date to bring it back?
I think we would want to hear from Mr. Wasserman, and if, in fact, they were willing to go back and provide a modified design, how much time they would want to allow for that, and I would defer to him on that.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Wasserman? Feel free to add anything that you want to add, and then the question that Commissioner Angel asked, if you could address that as well.
Okay. Don't really have anything to add other than we would support Dean's recommendation that you adopt number 3. We've talked a little bit about how much time that might take. Don't have a definitive answer yet from our engineer. In addition to redesigning the driveway, we're also going to have to redesign what our contemplated lot usage is and how we're going to have to redesign the parking spaces and that kind of thing. And we would guess it's probably unreasonable to think all that's going to happen sooner than 60 days from now. It's probably going to take another design review committee meeting, and we'll want to work closely with staff in working that, so we'll have a lot of schedules to coordinate.
Okay.
Set it out 90 days.
So you think, yeah, that's what I was going to say, you think 90 days or 60?
I think 90 days would be fine. 60 would probably be fine, but I'd rather
be safe.
I'd rather have enough than not.
Yeah.
Than to come back and ask you to do it again.
Okay.
Does
Thank you very
anyone
much,
have a
sir.
calendar for a date?
Yeah,
90
we
days
were
out?
just saying, we'll need a calendar.
Should we do that?
We can grab a date. Deliberation.
The The last city commission meeting in April looks like it would be April 22nd, which would be roughly 3 months.
Mayor and Commissioners, as you might imagine, the purpose of the specific date is because we are continuing the public hearing to a date certain. It certainly could be continued if more time was required. I think it's just a matter of keeping the date and the pendency of the hearing open.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item? Do we have a need for quasi-judicial deliberation on this matter?
I don't see any.
Seeing none, I entertain a motion.
Mayor, if I may, just while you all are having a chance to process that for a moment, I might mention that I do think one thing we might wish to consider, if the plan is to look at a plan that would determine whether you felt that it was in the public interest to vacate the restricted access, I believe we are possibly in that scenario again where you might want to set out certain conditions proceeding between first and second reading to be sure that so that you didn't simply adopt your ordinance on second reading, the restricted access be vacated, and the plan not necessarily go forward. If you want, that doesn't have to be dealt with today, but just so that you all and Mr. Wasserman and his client, we would just want to structure that in a way that whatever plan might be workable for all concerned, if that is to go forward, we would want to have some identified benchmark where you felt that that had gone to a point where you would be comfortable with your second reading on the vacation.
Based upon that, I think we maybe should have a motion then for quasi-judicial meeting with council for 10 minutes, reconvening at 5:08.
That work? Second?
So we have a motion and a second to adjourn into quasi-judicial deliberation to develop facts and findings, and we would return at 5:08. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? We are in deliberation.
Numbers, then presumably the military could just go.
We've returned from our deliberation session to our general session. There further discussion at this time?
Where's Mr. Andrew? Mr. Andrew, can I ask you a question? Should we set this over, keep the public hearing open until March 25th, which is about 60 days? When would staff need, say, not necessarily a full set of drawings, but need to know any additional proposed curb cuts on this new road from Riffle to 9th and traffic flow? When would staff need that information in order to have time to review that and be prepared to come back on March 25th?
I would say about 2 weeks in advance of that, because we probably would like them to submit a drawing, and we probably, as Mr. Wasserman mentioned, schedule a development review team meeting to go over that. And the other thing that I mentioned to him that we'd want to do is, because we have a 66-foot high-pressure gas line easement along the south property, any plan that we come up with, we'd want to have time to get input from the gas transmission group, because they're going to have a say about what goes in their easement. So if we had drawings about 2 weeks ahead of that date, we would be fine.
Is that March 11th calendar?
Is that it?
Bad math, I just want to make sure.
Yes, the Monday 2 weeks prior would be the 11th.
Okay.
And Mr. Bingston, if for some reason those drawings can't be produced at that point in time, would we be able to extend the public hearing on this matter?
Certainly.
Okay. So it's more or less a target, maybe transitional, for us to try to hit, and then if not, we can delay it, but we'd prefer to deal with it in that period of time. Okay. Any other questions, or?
Well, based upon the transition of the new commission, I think was the worry about trying to have this decision made prior to any new commission coming in. That being said, I would make a motion directing the petitioner to modify the petition to plan to redesign or relocate the proposed driveway so it would be located and designed to function as a true shared access drive and not as a driveway serving an individual business parking lot. And also direct the petitioner to at least get to staff any proposed, whether or not there will be any proposed curb cuts on this new driveway from 9th to Riffle, and any traffic flow issues that the petitioner sees or anticipates by making this new driveway. Get that to staff by March 11th, 2013, and to continue the public hearing until March 25th, 2013.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm going to ask for your notes so I can make sure that I get it right. We have a motion and a second to, first of all, extend the public hearing until March 25th. And we have requested that drawings be submitted for March 11th, and that those drawings depict any curb cut and traffic flow design of the new property or the new development being proposed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0. We move on to consent.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of January 14, 2013. Item 6.2, approve the minutes of January 18, 2013. Item 6.3, acknowledge receipt of a special law enforcement trust fund report. Item 6.4, award a contract for the 2013 crack and joint maintenance to Missouri Pavement Maintenance in the amount of $253,845.90 with a 10% contingency of a total amount or contingency of $25,384.59. Item 6.5, resolution number 136972, authorizing a sound provider agreement for the Smoky Hill River Festival to Hooper Sound Production Services, LLC.
Do we have any commissioners that have any questions on any of these items? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move we can approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda is read. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0. We move on to development business.
Item 7.1, application number P12-1A, accepting the offered utility easement and drainage easement and street right-of-way dedications to serve the Pheasant Ridge Addition Number 2.
Mr. Andrew.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is an application that is for final plat approval for Pheasant Ridge Addition Number 2. You've got a number of items on your agenda that relate to this development, so I'm just going to focus on the platting aspects of that. But what you see on the screen that's developed there is the Pheasant Ridge Addition, which consists of 18 single-family lots plus the First Christian Church. It was serviced by a street at the time of development, Prairie Lane, and it first developed back in 1992, and at the time it was developed, some of the issues looked at were off-site drainage and determining floodplain boundaries, the inability of the city to serve this area with a gravity sewer system, and the fact that we had a dead-end water line on Crawford. And those items were addressed by constructing a concrete line drainage channel to bypass water around the subdivision, installing a small sewer pump station up in the northwest corner that pumps sewage back to Markley Road, and then construction of an off-site water line to Brookwood, creating a loop system with two sources of flow. In June of 2012, a preliminary plat of the Pheasant Ridge Addition was approved by the Planning Commission, and Mr. Welsh of Todd Welsh, Inc. has purchased 7.26 acres north of Pheasant Ridge Number 1, and is proposing laying that out into a plat with 27 building lots for single-family residential construction. And John, if you want to go to the ownership map, number 2. This is a layout of what we have there, with Presbyterian Manor owning property to the west. Overland Ventures, who is the developer of Heritage at Hawthorne Apartments, they own the property on the north side of Brookwood. First Christian Church owns through from Crawford to Brookwood Extended, and then this is the property we're discussing right here. So the layout has 27 lots. That would be on item 5 there, John. And be designed around the extension of 2 public streets. So this is Quail Hollow Drive circling around in a loop. This is Prairie Lane extended. They would connect up to the future Brookwood Lane extension. Quail Hollow Drive and Prairie Lane would provide access to all 27 proposed lots. At the present time, Brookwood Lane cannot be extended east of Estates Drive because the property on the north side is not platted. There's no right-of-way, no interest on their part in extending the street. As we pointed out, the property directly to the east side of Prairie Lane is owned by First Christian Church. They have no plans to develop their property in the near future. The right-of-way widths are 60 feet of public right-of-way and 33 feet of paving. That matches the existing subdivision to the south and meets the city's design standards. On this layout here, you'll see 13 lots in Block 1, 14 in the center of the lot. The most notable thing is that there is a swath that you see in your packet of floodplain that comes through and goes right through the middle of the property. And the plan for dealing with that is to construct an extension of the bypass drainage on the west and try to move the floodwaters into that instead of meandering across this property as they do today. But this plat has to reflect the conditions that that ditch does not exist today. So there are a number of lots right through here that are in the mapped 100-year floodplain. The developer is not planning to build homes with basements, so that is not an issue, other than even a slab-on-grade home that's in the floodplain has to be elevated to a certain elevation. However, the developer will be motivated to get out of the floodplain just for ease of eliminating flood insurance and financing issues that sometimes come up with that. As far as water supply, there are 6-inch lines in Quail Hollow Drive and Prairie Lane. Those will be extended, and then a connection made here and here up to the Brookwood line. Sanitary sewer. John, if you want to go to either the aerial map or number 13 that shows the sewer. The plan is to relocate the pump station here and move it up to the northeast corner of the subdivision in the right-of-way for Prairie Lane. And from there, the effluent will be pumped down Brookwood to a manhole near Estates Drive and Brookwood Lane. The developer will be responsible for relocating that pump station and extending all connections to it. Probably one of the, as we go back, if you could go back to the plat, John, which would be either 5 or 6. The most important design consideration here is that we have a ditch that comes from north to south that needs to continue in order for the water to bypass the subdivision. And I think, John, if you go to 9 or 10, we can see where that ditch terminates. But this is the existing ditch, and it gets up to a point where it terminates right here. And in order to continue that, an easement is needed from Presbyterian Manor because it bisects. It's partially located on Presbyterian Manor property and partially located on Mr. Welsh's property. And so the applicant will have a set of covenants that will deal with design requirements and building restrictions for homes in the area. The density is 3.7 units per acre, which falls within the low density category. We are talking about modest-sized lots. They're 63 feet wide and 109 feet deep. That meets the city's minimums, but they would be considered on the modest side as far as residential building lots. The Planning Commission approved this plat in the fall of 2012, and the action before you today, if you are in agreement, would be a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the plat and accept the offered easement, street right-of-way dedications, and also the dedication of the 20-foot utility and drainage easement outside the boundary of the plat. So, John, that would take us back to your slide number 1. And so this right here is an easement, 20-foot, that's on the Presbyterian Manor side of the property. So there'd be a total of 45 feet of drainage easement available to locate that extension of the ditch on. And again, the plan is to take the property or the water that flows through the property today and relocate it from meandering through the property and confine it to the ditch. With that, I'd be open to any questions about the plat or plat layout itself. You've got future items coming up with the benefit district for improvements and also the housing agreement. But I'd be happy to address any questions about the plat layout.
Any questions of staff?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll return it back to the commission for any discussion and action.
Mayor, I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the plat and accept the offered easement and street right-of-way dedications on behalf of the city, including the dedication of Presbyterian Manors, Inc., the 20-foot utility and drainage easement outside the boundary of the plat that is needed to allow the extension of the north-south drainage easement in its current alignment.
Second.
Motion and a second to authorize myself to sign the plat and accept the offered easements and street right-of-way of the dedication on behalf of the city. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0.
Item 7.2, second reading ordinance number 10,648, changing the zoning district classification in the Pheasant Ridge Addition Number 2 to R1 district.
This ordinance 12-10648 was passed on first reading July 23, 2012. Since that time, there have been no comments received. Second reading of the ordinance was held until approval of the final plat of this residential subdivision. Do we have any questions or comments by the commission at this time? Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move that we adopt on second reading ordinance number 12-10648.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve ordinance number 12-10648 on second reading. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Angel?
Aye.
Commissioner Crawford?
Aye.
Commissioner Householder?
Aye.
Commissioner Shirley?
Aye.
Mayor Jennings?
Aye. That motion carried 5-0. We now move on to administration business.
Item 8.1, consideration of bids for the 2012-2013 wayfinding signs.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. The 2012 wayfinding project was a continuation. There is a continuation of our 2009-2010 project where we put up signs around the city directing motorists to points of interest in our town. It was, at the time, it was partially funded by KDOT and city funds. It has an artistic component to it, designed by some local artists. The signs have been up for the last couple years and seem to be performing well. This was a continuation of that project. And when we did the first project, or when we completed construction on it, it took a while to get the signs installed based on some challenges from the contractor and the supplier at the time, and so staff at that time actually did try to get some separate quotes because we weren't sure where they were going to be able to finish the project. So in utilizing some of those quotes, we really thought a $200,000 estimate or budget number was a good number. However, the bids were opened and they came in all higher than that number. They did. They were very close to each other, within pretty close percentage-wise. You can see they were fairly tight, so it's hard to argue that maybe, okay, maybe they really do cost this much to put in. So we don't feel like a rebid at this point would help us a whole lot. So staff had to go back and look at what was wrong with our estimates before, and we did talk to some of the contractors and the suppliers, and materials have gone up, and at the time of the economy in 2009 was a little bit of a concern for them, so they were bidding things cheaper, I guess, and that's whether that's all you're getting the whole story or not that's what we heard anyway. So bottom line is we feel like the low bid is, although it's a low bid and it's a local supplier, it's a very high number. These are expensive signs, and we'd rather not at this time build these signs at this price. So I have explained in here a little bit of just the individual costs for each sign at $24.70 for the smaller signs and $4,300 approximately for the larger signs. They're very expensive signs. They are good signs. However, we feel like knowing kind of what they cost to just to make the sign, there's quite a bit of money and labor here, and we feel like maybe this would be a possible project for public works crews at some point, or a different kind of bidding process in the future. As well as KDOT is asking for applications right now for transportation enhancement funding, which is what funded this project originally. So we felt like it's probably a good time to maybe at least ask them for funding for this again. So that's why we feel like it's a bummer for the the bidders to go through the process and then not get awarded the contract, but we feel like it's in the best interest of the city at this time to apply for KDOT funding, knowing also that the last time we applied for that KDOT funding, it seemed to have been looked upon highly. We were just in the process of finishing the old project, and they said, you finish that first, then we'll consider this one. So we feel like, okay, we can at least try that. Now it doesn't guarantee we'll get funding, and we may be back to you later in the summer with either funding or no funding. We're trying to figure out a way to build these signs. So anyway, that is our recommendation at this point, is to reject all bids and approve resolution 136977, authorizing city staff to submit an application to KDOT for 2013 TE program funds to assist with this project. I will stand for questions.
Any questions of staff?
Any idea how much we could save using our local labor? Is that going to put us down in that? Do you remember how that was broke out before on previous signs, maybe on a percentage basis, to where we could estimate we're going to save $35,000 or?
Per sign, we could save a couple thousand per sign. So that's when you look at the total cost of the signs. Basically, the signs were a third, and then it was basically two-thirds to install them. So it did seem, based on what we could come up with the contractors, it was a lot of labor. And we can't argue that it is a lot of labor, but it's something that's not complex labor. It's just you have to drive around town. There's a lot of locations. You got to get utility locates. You got to dig a hole. You got to wait till the hole, concrete cures, and you got to, stand the post and come back. It's just a long process. That's basically what they bid into it. The contractors were honest with us and said it's just a lot of time, and you can't just mobilize and go and get a lot of work done. So it's a lot of labor involved. So with city staff labor or temporary help labor some other way, we thought we could signs.
And I didn't mean to say it wasn't going to cost us. It still costs us man hours. It's a misconception that we'd be taking them from another project, so I didn't want to indicate that, yeah.
But it's something that we feel like is something to at least consider in the future. If you can, we can get the signs for approximately half is what it looks like. The signs,
is that right?
The signs are half or less as far as just buying the signs. So putting them in is the expensive part.
So do you think it would be smart at this point, or do we want to wait on the bid process to do two things, to maybe first authorize you guys to go ahead and see if there is any of that state funding available, but then simultaneously, or should it wait to maybe put it back out to bids with us doing the labor and just the sign manufacturing cost, or
Yeah.
is that putting the cart before the horse, or?
Yeah, I guess we thought all we needed to do today was reject bids and apply for KDOT funding. And then, depending on how that process goes, we'd have to,
Yeah.
I guess, go out. We figured we'd for sure go out for bids with a separate cost for labor and a separate cost for the signs. And then we would bring that back to you. We could break that out and say, yes, we're gonna plan to purchase the labor, or no, we're gonna try to do that with our own staff or figure out some other way. But at least we'll have the signs separated out in a competitive bid process. That was our thinking anyway.
How do y'all feel about that, maybe putting it out for?
Well, that's the process that
Yeah.
he's describing, so.
I don't think that needs to be in the motion, though.
No,
That's
it-
the process that
Yeah.
we follow anyway.
Leave it out.
The thing that I would encourage staff is when that comes back to the commission, that you would have an estimated cost to staff.
Correct.
So that we would know our people, our man-hours, because we could do the pencil, as
Yeah.
Commissioner said. It's not necessarily less expensive. It could be more expensive.
Right.
If we look at it with our people, than utilizing somebody. And then we'd have those numbers to show that, well, we took a look at it, and it's less expensive to go with the contractor than it is to buy the signs and put them in. But if staff will supply that with their recommendations, so we could see our true cost of labor,
Makes sense.
then that'd help out.
Yeah, Commissioners, we'll likely give you some various options on the installation. The one thing we'll have to look at on the labor as well is, depending on the time of year, that would become the most important part,
Right.
or important job for those particular persons, instead of some, street repair, curb and gutter repair, and some of that. So timing is a factor too. If we want to wait till next winter, it's a little different impact than if we are into summer and fall. So that all will be a factor as well.
Sure.
But we can bring back multiple options for you.
Sure, because I'd like to see it finished out. I mean, the project, I think we all
Absolutely.
would, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any other questions of staff? Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for further discussion and action.
Mayor, I move we reject all bids and approve Resolution 13-6977, authorizing city staff to submit an application to KDOT for 2013 TE program funds to assist with this project.
Second.
A motion and a second to reject all bids and then to apply for the KDOT funding for this project. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0.
Item 8.2, Resolution Number 136969, providing for the advisability and authorization related to the established Special Improvement District for street, drainage, water, and sanitary sewer improvements in the Pheasant Ridge Addition Number 2.
Mr. Stack?
Back again. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a resolution of advisability and authorization related to the Special Improvement District for street drainage, water, and sewer improvements for Pheasant Ridge Number 2, which Dean previously spoke about. This project has been considered before with in July 23rd of 2012. There was an original ordinance for this rezoning the property, as well as a development agreement to take what we have as some grant funds and utilize them to help make this an affordable, viable project. It's been a challenging piece of property for many years, trying to, with all the amount of infrastructure that has to go into this property, sewer, water, storm drainage, as Dean talked about, it made it fairly complex and maybe not economically viable at the time to build some houses here. And so these grants were something that really benefited this project to be able to be considered at that time with the development agreement. The city did go out for proposals for the development agreement for basically proposing developers of how they would develop the property, and Todd Welsh was the developer that was chosen, TWI Development Incorporated. Basically 27 lots at $135,000 per house, basically, subject to an increase of 3% per year. And this development agreement will be considered, I guess, in a few, actually right after this, I believe. So that'll be another step in the process. But this portion of this development is the petition and feasibility of authorizing the improvements to occur. So we're dealing right now with the cost of the improvements, what the improvements are, and the costs have been a challenge to come up with over the last 6 months. Originally, when we started out with this project with the preliminary plans that were prepared by Earls Engineering, it was about a $750,000 project. Basically, that cost, with the utilization of the grant funds, showed very low special assessments of $6,700 approximately per parcel. So that was a very good, very affordable at the time, and city staff did qualify that estimate as preliminary, with the final amount to be determined later. However, since that time, many factors have factored into significant increases in the project costs. So Earls Engineering had to meet KDHE requirements, EPA requirements, City of Salina standards for infrastructure designs. At the preliminary stages, those things just hadn't been flushed out enough to really put a good cost and a good contingency on this project, and we just didn't get a high enough contingency on it to really cover these things. Some of the things that were significant are sanitary and storm sewer, totaling over $275,000 approximately. And with that comes percentages of increases on all the other things as well. So that's why it's a significant difference from the last time we were here. Storm drainage, sanitary sewer. Westar has to provide 3-phase power, which you think, well, that shouldn't be a big deal. It's $30,000. So it's everything just kept adding up, and unit prices have increased. We bid our concrete project this last fall. We had to reevaluate those bids because they were pretty high. So that, we had to also look at costs again. It seems like economy has improved enough to where the contractors aren't just buying it at cost anymore. They're it's a competitive process, so we won't know. But the staff had to be conservative somewhat on the estimates. So anyway, these changes have increased the individual lot assessments to more than double what they were before. Final project estimate is now $1.16 million approximately, with special assessments now to be around $18,816 approximately per parcel. And I say approximately because it's an average. That's just an average. Each lot is a different size, so they're approximately in that range. This is still pretty really good though for City of Salina parcels. So in comparison, just to compare it with Stone Creek, which is another project that Todd Welsh has done, and it was fairly affordable housing. The prices of those homes today appraise at 140-ish, 130 to 140 to 150 on the high end. So they are similar types of houses, and those assessments at the time were $27,000. So these are significantly lower than that by $10,000. So these will still be very affordable houses. There's obviously a market out there for this. It's something that a lot of seems to be a good market in Salina right now that's really selling and really I would say booming, but it's the ones, these are the houses that people want. So we feel like it's still a good value, it's still a good project. The competitive bid process will hopefully help maybe bring these costs down, but we had to be conservative for this portion of the project where we're at. Development agreement, which you'll consider later, doesn't obligate the City Commission to favorably consider this petition. Rather, it just provides that we will diligently consider in good faith and pursuant to applicable law. If you approve the petition, the improvements will be constructed under 2 separate contracts. The city will administer both of those. Water and sewer will be separate from storm sewer and street. And we'll undertake the bid letting process and present those bids to you at a later date. The attached petition was submitted last Thursday by Todd Welsh, president of TWI Development Incorporated, and Floyd Stoddard, church moderator of First Christian Church. They own over 50% of the property of record, so that's it meets the petition requirements for more than 1/2 of the area to be assessed, so it meets all the requirements of the state statute. Attached to the engineering and feasibility reports for your review. Todd did ask that we limit the breakdown. He feels like that doesn't help him when he goes out for bids if we already have a number that contractors can shoot for, which we feel like the competitive bid process works itself out in that, but it's no problem to just keep those out for a while. That was not an issue, and our city attorney's office said that's okay with citing the KSA 45-221, which allows protection until the bid documents, basically until the project is actually bid. So basically there is no city cost to this project. It's all going to be assessed. 100% of the cost of the improvements are proposed to be financed through the grant funds, cash contribution from the developer, and special assessments. Special assessments are normally paid over a 15-year period. However, they can be paid off early. And I guess I will entertain questions at this point.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, let me get that last part that you said about holding the cost to something. I was kind of reading the documents. I was trying to pay attention, but I don't hear so well anymore. 25 years of rock and roll. Go over that little part again where you were saying that there wasn't some price caps on something?
There's price caps on the homes for, this is what the home would cost, and that's actually considered in the development agreement. So it is $135,000 currently.
But the developer's asking that we remove that?
Well, I think in the next item, it's actually, he's going to ask for it to be raised a little bit, so that will be considered later.
Okay.
But at this point, it's $135,000 is what he's obligated to.
So, Mr. Stacker, Commissioner, if I may, did I understand your question to relate to the
assessment
projected costs and
of the home? I mean, I thought the whole idea of these low-income houses was to have a fixed cost in there.
Okay.
So if we're allowing the developer to tell us we want to remove that, it just seemed a little odd to me. But if you're just saying that we're talking about a slight increase due to these increased costs, as I can understand.
Taking a couple years, and
Sure.
I think that's what you're going to consider later. We're really only considering the cost of the assessments and the improvements at this
On there.
point.
That's what we need to stay on task at.
Yeah, well, let's also look at that. So this money that's being fronted, this 243, this 130, and this 118, 1750, you're saying that TWI is fronting the remainder of that amount? They have a bank loan and they're putting that money out there out of pocket, or? I mean, that was my understanding. You said that the city won't have any cost in there, and I thought traditionally when we did specials, the city bore all the cost,
Well,
the risk.
yeah, I might be able to answer that. The development agreement provides the application of the grant funds that have been secured, as
Sure.
well as the developer's investment. And so the issue as it relates to the changing in the house pricing is the next agenda item, but
Sure.
it relates to grant funds that may no longer be eligible to apply to this project. So we're trying to account for that change in scope of the project. As it relates to the special assessments, we do bond finance the special assessments, and so we're at risk in terms of that bond issuance, but we've done a generic risk analysis in terms of if there's a default, the value of the properties are such that we'd be able to recover.
Sure, but I just think it's good that the people at home understand that the developer is taking this much risk, and the city is taking this much risk. We're the ones fronting some $600,000 here. I'm not saying TWI is going to go out of business, but if they do, we're in the real estate lot development. I mean, and this has been coming for a while, and I'll support this, but I'm probably going to go publicly now and announce that future developments I'm not in favor of the city funding money anymore for these special assessments and new green space development. I don't think it's in our city's best interest financially. I think we need to redevelop areas of town we've abandoned. And I don't understand why the city continues to be if the bank's not willing to loan a developer money, well, why the heck is the city willing to go out and put $700,000 on the table for a private developer? So I want to make that clear that when we say that the developer's paying for it, I mean, he's paying for it if his buyers buy the lots and they're paying for it. TWI is never cutting a check for $600,000 or $700,000 or whatever the difference is. So.
The assessments are paid back over time with interest, so I guess arguably, Rod, we actually don't pay any money, but we do take on the risk ahead of time. But that eventually gets paid back, and the taxpayers aren't.
Right, absolutely.
But it is we take.
Yeah,
on
it was
the risk, and you're
the
right.
text
Or
or the way it was said, it makes it sound like the developer's graciously funding that money, and he's not. The city of Salina is funding that money. The taxpayers are paying it back. But should something happen and TWI not finish it, we will own these lots. And I understand your risk assessment says, hey, great, we can sell them off. But why are we in the real estate business?
Commissioners, we wouldn't necessarily own them. We would have an opportunity like anyone else to come in. The key behind all this to remember, and notwithstanding the questions about green space development, which I recognize is a bigger development question, but obviously this is a similar housing development as most of our other housing developments, with the exception of a few things. One of them is the price point for the homes, and another is some of the additional energy efficiency and other quality aspects that were required, that you're going to talk about next. Not to jump ahead too much, but the staff trying to leverage those federal dollars to target into that for those folks in that income level is why we're here with this application. That's really the big difference from that. And I don't disagree necessarily with impacts of the green development and some of that, but obviously this started some time ago, and that's why we're here.
Right, and that's why I've definitely, let's say, and I will support this because I know that Mr. Welsh has had this going for a long time, and I think it would be wrong to come now and say we're not going to do this, but I'm laying the groundwork out there to let people know that the city does fund these things, and why in the future I may not support future use of special taxes. I think we need to get developers that can come in here and front the money themselves, and if they don't have that money, they don't need to eat up our green space, expand our roads, make the citizens pay for those improved roads. I mean, that's who pays for those roads.
I think they can, but I think if you look at the history of the market in Salina in the last, say, 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to see typically more investment, with the exception, actually, of Mr. Welsh's development that Dan mentioned. You're going to see houses that today would probably be in the 250-plus price range, and that's the total difference. You wouldn't see any of this put into that subdivision. It's just trying to bring that price point down, and that was it.
Sure. Would these funds, that was my next question, too. Would these funds still be available had he or any, I shouldn't just pick on TWI, it's not just him, it's all of it. This is nothing that's special to him. It's been a tradition in Salina for as long as I can remember. So it's not, we're not picking on any one developer, but would these funds still be available had he been able to find or applied for, he may not even applied for it, bank financing? I mean, the city doesn't have to necessarily front this money to receive these grants, is that correct?
That would be correct. The city has been offered the grants to be used for a purpose of buying down the cost of infrastructure into this subdivision. This is the one that we chose as far as doing the development agreement, working out with TWI Incorporated. Any developer is eligible to go out and bank finance their own subdivision, which there have been in the past, subdivisions who have been bank financed or with the owner financed, developer financed. This happens to be a different situation where we're using some federal funds to buy down the cost of the infrastructure in each one of these 27 lots.
Okay.
At this point in time in the process, on any one of these, Mr. Hobby, when we sit in this role as commission, we are talking about the advanced financing of what aspects of the property? What will this cover?
You're talking about the financing of the streets, the stormwater, the water, and the wastewater into this development.
So that's done in advance, and then as the homes are hooked up to those streets and that infrastructure, then the homes start to pay the special.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And then in the meantime, as Commissioner Householder mentioned, we really have ownership of those streets and that infrastructure. Okay, thank you.
The developer that owns the lots, until he sells them, he's stuck paying those assessments. So
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, it doesn't,
somebody pays them.
it doesn't
Sometimes the
sit there
developer will
vacant
pay him
for
a while until
30
he sells
years.
a lot,
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm not alleviating saying that the developer doesn't have some risk. I mean, the risk, but it's significantly lowered by he's maintaining these sort of yearly tax fees against having to front the whole money. But again, the risk is really to us. If he defaults, we're stuck with the whole $600,000. We can't declare bankruptcy and go protect, well, I suppose we can, but
We'll be back up here,
wanna
just
go
for
there.
your information, we'll be back up here in a month or less for another one of these, so.
Yeah.
I guess it's Quail Meadows
And
5.
Mr. Stack, did you just say that should a developer do a project like this, and we do the bond financing, the specials essentially commence right away, the payments commence right away, so the developer would have to pay those.
Correct.
And even if the homes don't develop,
Right.
per the developer's thought stream schedule, all that, they're still on the hook for that.
Right, they own the lots, and so every
Yeah.
year they pay on the lots until they actually sell the lots, so it's,
Right,
there's some risk.
then they can recoup.
And then they either recoup it in the sale, or
Right.
however they set that up.
And I think that's probably, as far as citizens that I've talked with, that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions.
Right.
They see something happen, and then they see it sitting there, and then they feel that Salina just spent $2 million, and they don't know that the payments start. And if there's no commercial building that's put on it, then they're having to make those payments.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you. Thank you very much.
Just another thought on the risk, Commissioners. If we had, 1,000 lots platted in this price range, obviously more than what we would need, more than market could sustain, our risk goes up dramatically. In this case, there aren't lots platted for houses in this price range. So the general risk that we have is very, very low, and probably lower than it would be for the typical subdivision in which you have a $250,000 plus house, because we have more of those lots out there that are being platted right now. I think, though, and this is something staff's talked about a lot, that's a very good question when we're talking about special assessments in general and the risk and what that means, as well as development patterns.
Right. Well, I'm hearing that there's all this demand. Again, I'm just curious why the city, if there's all this demand and it's a sure deal, why we're even funding it? Why we're in the banking business? I would think Sunflower or UMB or anybody would say, "Hey, we'd like to make a little money on that deal. Let's fund these guys." Again, if there's such a demand, and I understand where you're coming from, and I think there's 450 buildable lots or something like that last we looked, but they may not all be in this price range. But there's a lot of lots out there that are already curb and guttered, and that's all in place right now. And that's significant risk the city already has out there a little bit. And I understand this is just one project. When you lay it out over all those projects, and if there is such a demand, I just wonder why we're still, this isn't, to the at-home players, this is new to them. It's nothing new to the staff or commissioners. I've railed against this for a long time. Again, I hear there's all this demand, and it's great.
It should be the matter for another day for us to discuss that policy of handling it in the future.
Seems highly relevant, but
I would like to respond to one thing you said, though, and just in case it's interpreted out there as this whole commission standing behind what you said, it sounds like you're dissuading developers from coming in, commercial or residential, and I would, at least from my perspective, say that's simply not the case, that I would encourage commercial and residential developers to come to Salina, whether they're expanding, whether they're going into green space, whether they're coming into North Salina and redeveloping there. I hope they don't interpret what your comments being that they're dissuaded from not doing that and not coming up with great proposals to expand our economic development and expand Salina.
With a 94% payback on residential, and the city constantly, that's a constant loss of 6%. That's pulling money out of taxpayers' dollars. I would discourage green space developers from coming in for residential reasons. I know we're going to always have to go to green space for new hotels and certain businesses, but this green space for development for residential is at a loss. The citizens need to realize that the city, when they see all those new houses going up and all those new developments, that is not making money for the city of Salina. That is increasing your taxes. That's increased road maintenance, and it is not paying back at 100%. It's an average of 94%, so we're losing space. So I would encourage redevelopers, and I would encourage the city to look at perhaps some tax abatements and funding for redevelopment more so than I would fronting money for residential developments, which cost the taxpayers money. I think the taxpayers need to be informed of that more so than the developers need to be encouraged to come in and spend more of the taxpayers' money for personal profit.
I'm sure everyone appreciates you repeating exactly what you just said.
I think we need to move on this issue. Are there any further questions of staff?
I had one real quick question, not to do with this, but it might be Dennis or Todd, either one of you could answer it. On the marketing part, who markets, this workforce housing? So Todd, you go out and try to recruit people for the affordable housing, or how does that work exactly?
Thank you, Commissioner Barb. Todd Wells, 221 South Morris. Thank you, Mayor Jennings, Commissioners. I'm not even quite sure I'll respond to your question first, because I'm not even really sure what item we're on anymore. So
yeah,
and that's where we should.
Just kind of following up.
Yeah,
we do need affordable housing, and you have new businesses and new people moving into town. How do you, as a developer, recruit those people to buy those lots?
And let me offer this, just in case that is a big jump ahead to the next item. If that's something that you feel that you're really going to discuss in length, feel free to just let Commissioner Shirley know that you're going to be right back up here in a moment and you cover all of those kind of things. I don't want you to get the two mixed, but please answer.
I think that may
if-
be a better question for 8.3.
Okay.
Okay.
Inside there. And again, while I have the form there, I would love Commissioner Householder to go to lunch with him sometime to explain on that, because again, as what Commissioner Angel said, I would really hate to get in the public for, you're not going to get Pulte Homes to come in here and get $1 million in infrastructure. It's going to be grassroots developers in town, and we'll look at the North Salina plan and try and get down there and help you out as much as we can, but I just want to make sure that we don't get that out there, because a lot of guys will pull away and go start developing in Lindsborg and Assyria and different places.
Well, we have 455 buildable lots now. We pulled 60 new building permits last year.
I agree, but if you're riding the car with me, you can't find a lot that isn't $40,000 to $60,000. You can't build a $140,000 house on a $60,000 lot.
So
it
which
just
means
doesn't make sense.
Which to me means commissions of the past have made that mistake. They've gone out and they've funded these projects without studying them properly, and now the city of Salina is at risk, because if those people continue to hold those lots, there's a much more chance for those people to go bankrupt and put those lots back in our hands. That's
Possibly,
my
but
thought.
there is also a 35% irrevocable line of credit that the developer has to put up and once the lots are sold. So it is a pretty good payback on your behalf. If a developer did go broke, I don't think you'd ever own them. They'd go to sheriff's sale. Either the bank would step in and protect their investment, and or the general public would love to buy lots at special assessment price only. So you would be most likely protected that way.
Potentially at a loss, though.
I'm not sure how you would be at a loss.
Gentlemen,
At a sheriff's sale, you get paid from there, and I'm paying them up until the time that they go defunct. And if they go into default, I paid special assessments. I'm current on them. Now I go into default, and then they would sell them at a tax sale.
And gentlemen, it is a good conversation for you to have sometime, because sheriff's sale could be at half value or double value, and we're just kind of guessing on the future.
And my question will be answered in 8.3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, you bet.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Any public comment on this matter? Seeing none, I'd bring it back to the commission for any further discussion and action.
Mayor, I approve the advisability and authorization resolution number 13-6969 related to establishing a special improvement district for street drainage, water, and sanitary sewer improvements in Pheasant Ridge. Addition number 2, and authorize staff to set the bid date for the project.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve resolution number 13-6969 and approve the bid date. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0.
Item 8.3, resolution number 136978, terminating the original development agreement for the workforce housing project and authorize the revised workforce housing development agreement.
Mr. Hoppy.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. You have a companion item today to discuss the original development agreement with TWI Development Incorporated on a 27-lot subdivision. Has been previously mentioned in 3 other items this evening. As we worked through the process, North Central Regional Planning Commission has started working with the environmental review, and our gentleman from Housing and Urban Development in Kansas City decided that since the area was in the floodplain, that he had some other requirements that he would require us to do and comply with the City of Salina on this development. Having a very good knowledge and a very good background and an expertise in floodplain management within our community, we did not feel that the issues with floodplain management were going to be any major of a process until we got into the environmental review by HUD and the developer in Kansas City. He suggested to us that we complete the project. In order to complete the project, we'd have to go through an 8-step public notice process. We'd also have to elevate each one of the lots as well as the streets to a elevation of 1 foot above base flood elevation. When we did the development just previously, the project did not incorporate into the development of each one of the lots prior to the sale of the lots, nor did we anticipate the elevation of any of the streets in this project. And therefore, in discussions with the gentleman in Kansas City multiple times on the phone, we decided it would be best to come to you and request that we terminate the original development agreement. We not use the funds from Housing and Urban Development in the cost of $118,750, but we continue on with a new development agreement using the funds from Environmental Protection Agency as well as North Central Regional Planning Commission and move forward with this development. knowing full well that city staff would be working with the developer to take each and every one of the lots out of the floodplain and meet the existing city code requirements for floodplain management. We felt like we were very well aware of the situation and the issues, but did not feel like we would like to add any additional cost to the infrastructure of each one of the special assessments for each one of the lots according to this process. And so what we asked of you today is to terminate the original development agreement with TWI Development and incorporate a new development agreement with TWI Development, whereby we would incorporate the two general lots, or the two grant opportunities remaining, as well as remove the Housing Urban Development lot grant funds. But then we'd also ask for you to allow, since the developer is going to carry the balance of the funding, or the $118,000 and $750 to each one of the projects of these grant funds, we'd allow him to, or he'd be requested that we allow him to add approximately $5,000 to each one of the buildable lots. Therefore, as mentioned earlier before, the $135,000 price cap for each one of the homes would then be raised to $150,000 cap, or $140,000 cap, and allow the developer then to recoup approximately $5,000 per lot over the period of the sale of the lots, knowing that he is not going to get 100% of his funds up, $118,750 up front, but he'd be carrying those monies throughout the whole sale of the lots, all 27 lots. City staff would ask that you would go ahead and approve resolution number 13-6978, allowing for the termination of the original development agreement, but also allow for the improvement or the approval of the new development agreement with TWI Incorporated. I'd be glad to stand for questions, except for the question of the marketing of the lots.
Any questions of staff?
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to add one clarification from the prior conversation as it relates to the development agreement. I just wanted to be clear to you as well as the listeners at home that the grants were granted to the City of Salina, and we then conducted a competitive request for proposal process where we identified the outcome that we were looking for in terms of affordable housing and quality housing, and then solicited proposals, and then entered into the development agreement. So this is the culmination of kind of a lengthy grant application as well as competitive selection process. The other thing that I would tell you is HUD specifically acknowledged to us that their standards as it relates to floodplains are higher than FEMA's. We didn't realize anybody had standards higher than FEMA, but as Mr. Howby indicated, we're very versed in the FEMA requirements. The HUD requirements kind of tip the balance.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may, one quick comment that certainly the policy discussion of the utilization of special assessments is an important one, and one that is strictly a policy question, so my comment is not related to that. But just so that you do know, this one of the complexities of this project is, of course, you have the benefit of the grant funding, but you also have the incumbent complexities anytime you were involved with grant funding. We had actually, I believe, in Mr. Welsh's original proposal, there was not necessarily special assessment financing. The ability of the city and the utilization of special assessments for the overall project and application of the grant funds to the payment of special assessments was far simpler than if we were taking grant funds, administering them through the city, and having to monitor Mr. Welsh's compliance as he might go through the private process of developing those improvements. So the merits of either position aside, just wanted to let you know that we had actually suggested that that was the simpler mechanism in this case to administer the grant funding.
Very good. Any questions of staff?
Yeah, my initial question was just the workforce housing program designed to promote the housing. I was just, who was in charge of that? How does that work?
So we'll get Mr. Welsh back up here.
Thank you.
And if you make reference to anywhere that you have done affordable housing so far, that might be a good mental picture for anybody on the commission that.
My pleasure. To answer your question, as a real estate broker in Salina, I did a Stone Creek project without any type of federal grants or any EPA or any help, and it was south outside of Schilling. And what I've started to notice was that there's a certain portion of people who want brand-new homes, but they don't necessarily need large homes. They don't want to do any fix-up. They're moving in from the community. They don't have time to do that. They're hitting the ground running. And basements were not a necessity to them. They just needed a place with the rents in our community being pretty high. They could actually buy a workforce, we call them workforce housing. I got that from Dennis somewhere that's there, rather than affordable housing. Thing to understand, there's no income limits to purchasing this property. It has nothing to do with low-income housing. It has nothing to do with qualifications or anything like that. It's just a word that we've come up with in workforce housing, meaning how do we attract somebody from Hays, Kansas, who is thinking about getting a job at Vortex, and they come here and they go, I'm just not going to come here because my family can't afford the housing in Salina. This gives an avenue for us to have, and in the workforce agreement that we've signed with the city, or the agreement, we must have 2 homes either under construction or ready to go at every time, so that when somebody looks at coming to Salina, we have ready available housing that is priced affordable for them to go into. And again, going back to, there's nowhere right now that I could go in Salina, do any type of residential housing, be able to sell lots for $15,000, build a $140,000 home, 1,300 square feet, 2-car garage, using local workforce to help the economic times go. We couldn't do it. And so with this project, it allows Dennis, the chamber, allows other companies. We're going to work with, go out to Crestwood, we're going to go out to other places and say, look, we know that if you can get an employee who owns a home in Salina, Kansas, they're more likely to stay here a longer time. And if they can stay here, they're not going to be recruited outside of Salina.
Right.
And right now, they just can't do that. So I have a little bit of expertise of putting that development together to go out there and do that. As far as marketing, it's going to be marketing businesses together, showing them a program and saying, can you do any type of cash contribution for somebody who's been here for a certain amount of time if we put them in a workforce housing project? And be working closely with Dennis and some of the commercial brokers in town of saying, if you have a company coming to town, we have some homes that are available, and show them the plat maps and things.
Now, at Stone Creek, did you have the 1-year minimum that they couldn't rent or sell it?
We did, and I learned a lot from Stone Creek, and that's why the covenants and restrictions are very strict that are there. No boats and trailers, no chain link fences, only a certain amount of pets inside there, no fences in the front yard. It's pretty strict inside there what can be done. And the one that you're alluding to is, at the price that we're putting in there, we didn't want an investor to come in and buy 5 or 6 of them and just make a string of rentals across there at a certain amount of money.
Thank you.
So you must be an owner-occupant to purchase the property within the first year, and then we believe once the community starts to establish through there, then we think it'll set the precedence for itself.
Okay. That answers everything. Thank you.
Perfect.
Super.
At least for me.
Any questions?
And while I have your attention, again, I can't say enough on here to Gary Hobby and his staff, Jason Gage, Bingston, Mike Scragg, who the project almost failed a couple of times, and both with Gary and Mike. Tremendous amount of stuff. Wayne Nelson and Martha Tasker for helping me with everything, and their city staff did a great job on this. I want to acknowledge them while I had the floor.
We'd like to hear that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you to staff for helping out through this whole long process. Do we have any other public comment?
Your Honor, Dennis Lauber from the Chamber of Commerce. I just want to echo a couple of points I want to make. First one, though, I do want to echo the comments that were just made, and really starting with that initial conversation with Jerry Moran, and then conversations with Jason Gage and Mike Scragg and every other person that was mentioned. A lot of folks work together, and it be very much of a attitude of we're going to make this work in Salina, Kansas, be development friendly. Todd touched on really the aspect that I was going to say about low income isn't really the proper moniker, as opposed to workforce housing. I do want to make a point here, and you may recall that I served Kansas on the Federal Home Loan Bank, Topeka's Affordable Housing Council, and we're involved in that group of policy issues regarding $16 million across 4 states to address workforce housing. I want to make a couple of points. The financing method that is being used here and discussed is far and away the most common method used for financing residential construction in Kansas, even more so in the state of Nebraska. Iowa would change their laws about 1998 in order, or excuse me, I'm sorry, 2008 in order to make their policy work more like what's happening here. A very common technique. You know that I could talk longer about housing financing than anybody wants to listen to. So my suggestion might be that at some point, perhaps this summer, some sort of a study session would be appropriate to talk about housing financing, because that's a great mystery that a lot of people don't understand, those kinds of issues. But that's a different issue than the one that Commissioner Householder brings up in my mind, the greenfield versus grayfield development. That's a good policy discussion. I would tell you that communities that are growing, that are seeing good development of workforce housing, are seeing things happen in both areas, new development and grayfield development. But again, bottom line, thank you to staff for having the attitude of we're going to make this work in Salina.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'd bring it back to the commission for any further discussion and action.
I do first want to say that it's great to see this finally come back before us, because it seems like we've been talking about workforce housing for, how long have you been here, Dennis?
Initial conversation.
9 years?
2006.
Long time. 6 years. That being said, I would move that the commission approve terminating the original workforce housing agreement and accept the new revised workforce housing agreement with TWI Inc. for the construction of infrastructure for a 27-lot subdivision benefiting those in the Salina workforce, and authorize the mayor to, it's on the next page, authorize the mayor to sign the workforce housing development agreement and related documents.
Second.
A motion and a second to terminate the existing workforce housing agreement and to enact the new. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 5-0. And again, I just want to reinforce all of the positive comments that were made towards everybody that had a hand in this. I see homes at $108, $110 a square foot, and that's highly energy efficient homes. That's just exciting for the community. So thank you to everybody involved.
Item 8.4, resolution number 136974, authorizing the preparation and filing with the Kansas Department of Commerce of a Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Recovery Act.
Mr. Hobby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor, Commissioners, not often do you get a chance to make a difference in the community, and I believe that we have before us tonight an opportunity which has been presented to you to approve a couple of resolutions. One would be to assist us in applying for a community development block grant from the Department of Commerce under the Business and Community Development Division for a 2013 Downtown Commercial Rehabilitation Grant Program. This grant program has changed slightly since you has received your packet last Thursday, and so I wanted to go over some of the things that are in that packet. We've worked directly with Phil Klima from the Downtown Incorporated, and she's done a great job to help us facilitate this grant process. We feel like we have an opportunity now to work on a project at 100 North 5th Street to work on a new grant program, one that would give us opportunity to apply for and receive grant funds for the rehabilitation of a structure in our downtown area. The original program that you saw was going to be for the purchase of the property, and we have changed that process slightly. And so you have before you this afternoon a new grant application, and I wanted to go over real briefly with you that grant application that has been changed. And what has been changed is in the middle of the paragraph where we talk about the project description. We have added that the project will be conducted within 3 phases rather than 2 phases. And now we have this opportunity to get the grant opportunity to move this project into phase 2 with the Community Development Block Grant used for the rehabilitation of the existing exterior of the structure. Therefore, the actual purchase of the property as well as the financing for the interior of the property will be completed by AP Assurance Partners, LLC of the City of Salina. So the grant funds that we're looking at today will be used for the rehabilitation of the exterior of the property. That grant fund will be a request for $250,000 from the Department of Commerce to work on the rehabilitation of this project. This is a new grant program, one that just initiated this past year. I know that Ms. Klima has been trying to work on multiple areas in the community to come up with a grant opportunity to do that. We have one at this particular time, and there is, and you saw in your packet, a request for resolutions to help us consider this grant. The attached resolutions, one will declare that this property at 100 North 5th Street it would be declared a blighted area in respect to the Downtown Small Cities Community Development Grant Program. It would also allow the authorizing staff to prepare the application for submittal to the Department of Commerce, Business and Community Development Division for a rehabilitation grant of $250,000. It also would authorize the mayor to sign the grant application and all the associated properties go on paperwork that is associated with this. It would also allow us to move forward with the removal of a blighted building within our downtown area. We feel like that would be very beneficial to our downtown and see our downtown grow. Staff has been working with the Downtown Development Group as well as the Assurance Partners and have come up with what we feel like is a great grant opportunity. We also will be working on with North Central Regional Planning Commission, and one of the associated documents with this is the administration agreement for the grant would be completed by the North Central Regional Planning Commission as well. And that would be some of the associated documents that are associated with this project here. We feel like we have an opportunity to make a difference in our downtown area and would ask that you would consider the resolutions that are associated with the 136974 and 136975 and the associated documents that approve a $250,000 grant opportunity for a downtown rehabilitation project. I believe that there are multiple staff in the audience that have worked on this grant project over the last week, 10 days. There's also Ms. Klima is here from Downtown Inc. She is very instrumental in the process of completing the grant, as well as there are staff members from the Assurance Partners LLC here to talk about this grant if you wish to ask questions. Otherwise, we stand for questions.
Mr. Bingston, do we have the opportunity to take a break in the middle of this? We've never taken a break in the middle of an item. Can we take a 5-minute break in the middle of this item?
I think that's certainly within your discretion there at any time you might wish.
I'll make a motion that we take a 5-minute break.
Second. Aye.
We're on break.
And Lions, helping families welcome their newest members with private birthing suites in the new Family Birthing Center, featuring whirlpool, family waiting area, and other features. More at rch-lions.com.
The Hutchinson Symphony Orchestra presents Fatal Attractions.
Great prove that they can hold this standard. My hat's off to that first female that makes it all the way through, and that is doing the training and doing.
Jeez.
And we return from our break.
Mr. Mayor, may I interrupt you briefly?
Please do.
I did fail to mention one gentleman who was very instrumental in this project. Very, very instrumental. Has been working on this project for quite some time, working with the development review team, and that's Brian Richardson, who has taken this project on and is just really taken on this fact. The other thing I want to mention to you is the fact we do have a picture of the downtown building as it would look like when it's completed, and I think that we can get that put up on the screen for you. And then the third thing I want to make sure you do is we open up a public hearing to make sure that we get public input in this project.
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing actually at this point in time on this matter so that we can allow for that public input on this matter.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I am Brian Richardson, 361 North Holmes Road, and do appreciate the opportunity for a redevelopment project in the heart of the city that's not needing infrastructure.
There you go.
And, so appreciate the opportunity to share that.
My hero!
Yeah, Mr. Householder. The help of the staff, again, I think you've heard it several times today, but Mike and Gary's efforts, and certainly Phil Klima behind me, have been instrumental in getting it to this stage, and the Chamber of Commerce, Salina Downtown. But I think this is an exciting time for Salina Downtown, specifically a building that a private company is looking to expand back into our hub of our city, bringing people as employment, and just an opportunity to redo a building that we've had earlier that started the meeting that we're fighting rebuilding, and curbs that we can't walk on and cones that are up going around it. And in this situation, we're probably not too far off in many cases. So would appreciate your consideration in moving this to the next step, that we can continue to redevelop our heart. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions, Mr. Richards? Thank you, sir. Do I have further public comment on this item?
Mayor, if I could clarify one thing, from the CDBG application perspective, the purpose of this public hearing is for you as the commission to determine whether you can make a determination that this building is a blight on the neighborhood. So ultimately, the resolution that you have before you will reach that conclusion following the public hearing.
Thank you. You appeared like you were headed up for public comment, sir. If you'd give us your name and address.
Certainly. Jim Wilson, 1160 South Marymount, here in Salina, and I'm president of Assurance Partners. On behalf of my shareholder partners and employees of Assurance Partners, we appreciate the City Commission's time this evening to talk a little bit about what we think is growing excitement within our firm to come back down to downtown Salina and be part of a beautiful project. So we're excited to bring 28 to 30 some employees back to downtown. We think it makes a lot of sense, and we appreciate the work of a good many people, particularly Phil Klima, to help us position ourselves for the city's consideration of this grant. So again, we appreciate the time and the effort and the consideration.
Super. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any other public comment? Bring it back to the commission for discussion, questions of staff, and any action.
I do have one question on application narratives. If we can just define the part where it says river renewal plan so people at home understand what that entails.
A few years ago, the staff and city, as well as outside agencies, came into the community and did a river renewal project and made suggestions to us that a new renewal plan would be something that would happen in the future. And therefore, this project sits right along one of those areas that would be considered in that river renewal project area.
Right, and when the public voted no on that project, how does that work?
It has no effect, it's just other than the fact that when we looked at the downtown areas, one of the things that we had already completed, and that happened to be a project plan overview. We've also done the very similar things with the Downtown Review Board and that type of areas of looking at what historic areas we have in the community. We also look at what benefits it will have for our community. So if this may be one of those things that brought back to the attention of the citizens that we have completed neighborhood revitalization plans, we've completed river renewal plan, we've completed a downtown special revitalization area, and it just happens to be in the area where those plans have been completed.
Okay.
Mr. Gage, do we need to first consider 6975 and then 6974?
I believe so.
Got 1A and 1B.
Let me take a look
That
here.
last blue page.
Mr. Hobby, do we have any of the other photos that were attached that maybe go to the mention of the blight?
I believe we do. It just
Everyone moment.
These are the photos that are included in your packet, but they're also up on the screen for you to look at the various facades of the structure that will be renovated. Please take in mind this is the building that is on the southwest corner of the lot, the parcel of ground that we're looking at. It does not include the motel area that we would know, or the motel-shaped area. This is just the building at the very corner of the lot, on the southwest corner of that lot. The balance of the property will be developed at a later time when Mr. Richardson comes through with a plan to complete the renovations or demolishing or new construction, or whatever the case may be. We've looked at a variety of different projects for that parcel, but this will be separating out the front building, or the building on the southwest portion of that lot, as a separate lot itself. Will have to be platted as such.
Is there definite plans for the purchase of the remaining property?
The purchase of the whole property, the entire property, has been completed and under contract. That the development plan has not been completed any further than what Assurance Partners is getting ready to develop or redevelop at this particular time.
Okay.
So as assurance partners would move in, the people living there would be vacated.
That would be up to the developer to
Oh.
figure out what he's going to do with the balance of the property.
There's a good
It's not up to
question.
us and our grant.
How long do you knock it down?
Well, actually, I think it's important to note that this is segregated. The CDBG
Separate.
grants would only apply.
Right.
And so the funds being used would not cause any relocation or cause any responsibilities that go along with that.
Yeah, we're just curious citizens.
Just, yeah,
Just concerned
if
citizens.
we needed extra security or anything while
Yeah.
they're moving in, if people weren't vacated.
Ms. Klima, you've gotten a lot of positive compliments on this, so I want to add to that. Thank you.
I think it's only fair to share. It takes a team to do something like this. Brian Richardson has been the Herculean effort as a volunteer in this group, and our board has certainly been watching this property and does consider it a highly blighted property. It's been essentially vacant and very underutilized since 1993, I believe, is when the hotel shut down in that area. And the entire property is under contract for sale, and then a recontract with Assurance Partners for just that building. This, again, as Mr. Scragg indicated, only concerns the corner building on this lot. It will not involve any housing displacement. That's extremely important when we apply for these CDBG grant funds, that we not be doing anything like that. We're just considering that hotel property and only the exterior renovations on that property. Everything else will be totally financed by the purchasers of the property. So it's just exterior renovations. So when you look at the pretty drawing on the board, that's what we're buying. It's a pretty drawing.
There you go.
So we, from the board of directors, and we have 3 of them here this evening with us, we do encourage you to consider this a blighted property and help us rehabilitate an existing infrastructure in downtown Salina.
Repeat that. You said you're encouraging us to consider this a blighted property? I
Yes,
just want to be
we're
clear.
encouraging you to consider this as a spot.
We may
blighted
not always
property.
agree as a commission up here, but I bet.
This is a great project, thanks to everybody that's involved. It's really exciting.
It is very good.
Commissioners, with that in mind, to address Commissioner Angel's question, you would want to address 1B before 1A, they're just out of order, and that's Resolution 13-6974 when you're ready to do that.
Do we need to note in any motion the changes Mr. Hobby mentioned, or can we make a motion just as it's set forth on the blue sheet?
Just dealing with the ordinances, or the resolutions, numbers.
I believe the resolutions
Without
would
com-
stand on their own.
Okay. Yes.
The application itself is the notes that we wanted to make sure you understood the difference between the application that will be submitted on Thursday this week to the Department of Commerce.
Let's get it done.
And we do have one additional clarification I think we need to cover as it relates to the next resolution as well. And Mr. Hubby discussed the change in the application. We've got some changes in the agreement between us and North Central in terms of grant administration that would apply as we talk about authorizing the grant application.
Mr. Bingston, is there any cause to hold the public hearing open on this matter?
I'll look to the others to be sure, but I would not expect so.
Okay, so we would expect to close the hearing on this today.
Mayor, I move that the commission adopt Resolution 13-6974, declaring a building blighted with respect to the Kansas Small Communities Development Block Grant Program.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve resolution number 13-6974. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0.
Mayor, I move the commission adopt Resolution 13-6975, certifying legal authority for applying for the Small Communities Development Block Grant Program on behalf of Assurance Partners, LLC.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve resolution number 13-6975. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 5-0, and we close the public hearing on the matter.
I apologize, but I do still have that clarification I need to make for you as it relates to that grant application.
Based upon the existing blighted conditions.
Exactly. There was an administration agreement between the city and North Central Regional Planning that was in your packet that goes along with that grant application. They were able to get it reviewed over the weekend and responded with some minor changes that I just want to be sure to call to your attention. The revised agreement would make them responsible for the environmental assessment and would add that $2,000 cost. So they would be compensated $19,000 rather than the $17,000 that you saw in your packet. We also asked them to itemize their compensation rather than lump sum. So they've identified that they'd receive $2,000 at the completion of environmental review, $3,000 after awarding a construction contract, $5,000 at payment of half of the construction contract, $5,000 for payment of the final portion of the construction contract, and $4,000 when the submission of the closeout packet to the Kansas Department of Commerce is made. And then they added some language to Article 6 that said additional services performed may require additional fees for such, but Article 6 spells out that the agreement can't be changed without our consent. So they're very minor changes, but they are changes to the agreement between us and North Central, and want to make sure that you consent to that.
Yep.
If you need another motion, we're going to need your notes.
Well, duly noted, those were the notes on the changes that were supplied to the commission in
Correct.
advance.
Right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we're good.
If you don't require an independent action on that, then we can move on.
If that's acceptable to the mover and seconder and that's consistent with your vote, I think that's fine, but you might want to ask the city attorney.
I would say that should work tonight.
It was in the packet. Yeah.
Duly noted.
Item 8.5, approval of an energy performance contract with Johnson Controls for a downtown lighting improvement project and an additional alternate lighting construction contract for additional lighting in the downtown area.
Mr. Frazier.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Back in July of 2007, the City of Salina entered into an agreement with BWR, currently Lochner, to develop a lighting a recommendation report that looked at lighting levels in the downtown area and considered options for the repair or replacement of 346 decorative lanterns that were installed in 1987, about 25 years ago. We tried to find money to be able to help with the project, and it was extremely expensive. The costs were estimated to be $1.5 million to $2 million. We looked at contacting our congressional delegation to get some assistance for funding. We did that in 2009 and 2010 unsuccessfully. Early in 2011, the city was approached by Johnson Controls, who believed that they could broker a partnership to replace the lighting. Johnson Controls' proposal to upgrade the downtown lighting was to gain discounts from Philips Lighting, utilize Johnson Controls and Key Lighting staff expertise, and finance the balance of the cost. A payback would come from the lower utility expenses over no more than a 30-year time period. At the October 17, 2011 City Commission study session, Johnson Controls presented a conceptual plan. However, the plan required the city make a $300,000 capital investment in the project. At the December 5th, 2011 follow-up City Commission study session, Johnson Controls and Key Lighting discussed a new plan that would lower the city's capital investment from $300,000 to zero, while providing lighting equipment with an expected life of 23 years. The new plan would essentially pay for itself without a capital investment over the 23-year time period. Johnson Controls' plan is possible by working with the Energy Office of the Kansas Corporation Commission, the KCC, who has a program called the Facility Conservation Improvement Program, or the FCIP. Then on April 9th, 2012, the City Commission approved an agreement with Johnson Controls to perform an investment-grade audit of the downtown lighting system. The project scope included replacement
of the downtown lantern fixtures, poles, internal lighting equipment within the boundaries of the designated downtown area. However, there would not be any replacement of the underground wiring. The number of lanterns that would be reduced would still help to be able to, with the LED lights, be able to maintain lighting standards that were established in the BWR report. Mid-block shoebox lights would be eliminated, and the intersection Cobra lights would be upgraded also with LED lights. Parking lot lights would also be improved and upgraded with the LED equipment. All of these changes believed to be possible through the use of the LED technology, which would provide better illumination with the use of the lanterns and fixtures and save energy at the same time. Another part of the IGA contract was to study and provide installation cost estimates for alternate areas. None of these areas currently have decorative lighting. At the December 3rd, 2012 City Commission study session, Johnson Controls presented the City Commission with the results of the IGA report. Their initial assumptions were confirmed that the replacement of the old system with new LED lighting systems would result in energy savings that would pay for itself within 30-year guidelines of the KCC FCIP program. The City Commission directed staff to provide a construction project to include the downtown core area, the alternate core area, plus alternate areas 2, 5, 6, 8, and 10. However, not all of these alternate locations would fit into the project within the 30-year payback as required by the FCIP program. The primary reason were these areas included new lighting, which do not qualify for energy savings. Therefore, staff worked with Johnson Controls to package the core area, the alternate core area, and alternates 5, 6, and 10 into an energy performance contract, and then combined alternates 2 and 8 into a separate contract with Johnson Controls. This approach is fine with the Energy Office of the KCC. The cost of the energy performance contract is $2,517,645. The additional construction contract is $590,889. The overall cost of the downtown lighting improvement project is $3,108,534. And I've broken out on a table there that shows that the FCIP fee is included in that $2.5 million. Johnson Controls has offered the city a guaranteed fixed price for the project with no change orders and guaranteed savings that the city will experience on utility bills. They will calculate the projected energy savings within 60 days after the completion of the project by comparing the old energy cost with the new energy achieved through the new LED lighting systems. Any loss in savings determined will be paid to the city by Johnson Controls within 60 days. Johnson Controls will not come back in the later years to measure the lighting levels again unless paid to do so. In addition, they will guarantee parts and labor for the first year. Years 2 through 9, Philips Lighting will provide the warranty on their LED lights. So we'd have to work with Philips Lighting in years 2 through 9. If the city decides not to go forward with a construction contract, the city would pay Johnson Controls the $28,000 IGA audit fee. However, if the construction project does move forward, and that's what we're calling the Energy Performance Project, Johnson Controls will absorb the audit fee. The projected completion of the construction is anticipated to be in advance of the Miracle on Santa Fe Christmas Festival in downtown Salina on November 23rd, 2013. The cost of construction would need to be bonded or financed, we're not really sure which one, through a municipal lease, most likely, over a 15-year time period. Utility savings from the project will recover most of the cost of the project over the 23 years anticipated life of the program. The average annual savings would be $133,384 each year, over the 23 years of the project using a 4% inflation rate. Now, there are two actions that are with this item. Action 1 is an energy performance contract, and staff has identified the following options and recommends option 1, which is to approve the energy performance contract with Johnson Controls for $2,476,876 plus pay the FCIP fee, $40,769, for the total cost of $2,517,645. The second item would be the alternate lighting project agreement. The city has identified the following listed options and recommends option 1, which is to approve the alternate lighting project with Johnson Controls for $590,000, $590,000, and then $590,889. We have with us Chris Christensen, Tim Mentz from Johnson Controls. We have Amy Chapman from Key Lighting, and we have Terry Stuber from the KCC that is here. So we have everyone here to try to answer any questions that you may have concerning the project.
We've had quite a few study sessions on this.
Yeah.
Are there any
questions?
Are there any staff questions at this point in time?
Maybe. Okay, so it says Johnson Controls will calculate the projected energy savings within 60 days, and then any additional check of that is at the city's cost. So if energy rates triple in 5 years, obviously or maybe that's already considered into the projection of what the savings will be. How do we project out in 15 years what energy rates are to know what the savings will be?
Yeah, I'm going to have to defer that. I don't know, Mike, if you have the answer, or maybe Chris.
Chris might be able to.
I'll let I'm going to let the engineer answer that. So this is Tim Mentz, the regional engineer.
Because didn't they just get an approval to increase rates?
Tim Mentz, Johnson Controls,
Tim,
Lennox, Kansas.
would you, you're rather tall, fella. There you go, thank you.
Tim Mentz at Johnson Controls from Lennox, Kansas. We have actually run the financial analysis, assuming a 4% annual increase in rates, which was not something we made up. That was working with Rod Franz, and that was mutually agreed upon. Of course, nobody knows what's actually going to happen to utility rates, but it's a pretty safe bet they're going to go up.
Right.
So 4% is what we've assumed.
So you worked it into the projection?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's my only question.
Like you asked, it's to your benefit. I mean,
We're saving.
Well, you save more if the cost goes up reversely, but yeah, that would be
Okay.
true.
conservative on our numbers.
Tim, I do have a follow-up question to that, because it talks about the measurement in the first year. Is there a presumption that that gap will be in place for the life of the project? How does that work on the payback?
Yeah, if we were to miss the savings, the guarantee, then it is a shortfall payment, not for year one, but projected out for 15 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions of staff? Public comment on this item? I'll bring it back to the commission for any discussion and action.
If you can leave it up to me to spend the money, you know you're all going to say yes. I'm just...
I'm just so tired, I don't think I can read that number.
Yeah, so do we need to say I move?
Option,
yeah.
option 1, 2,
Yeah,
or 3 under action 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So I move to adopt, you're saying action 1. Do we need to make a reference to?
All the options under action 1?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, all options under action 1, and approve the energy performance contract with Johnson Controls for $2,476,876, plus pay the FCIP fee of $40,769 for a total cost of $2,517,645.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the energy performance contract with Johnson Controls in the total amount of $2,517,000. No, let me start that again. As our Vice Mayor
That's why I
said, a
didn't
little
read
too
it.
tired. $2,476,876 plus pay the FCIP fee in the amount of $40,769 for a total of $2,517,645. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0.
Mayor, I move that we also adopt action 2 of this, with option 1, approve the alternate lighting project agreement with Johnson Controls for $590,800, or $590,889. Wow, $590,889. Whew, we're just spending money. I saved $10 there. That's worth something.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the alternate lighting agreement with Johnson Controls in the amount of $590,889. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carried 5-0.
And thank you guys for waiting 4 hours for us.
Oh, yeah.
I know you guys got
Yeah.
here early.
Can I make one comment?
Please.
I just want to thank everybody that helped with this, Mike Frazier, Jason Gage, and everything. I travel to a lot of different cities, and I'm going to keep it very brief, but I will tell you, this is probably one of the most professional staffs that I've ever worked with.
Good.
Their attention to details beyond anything we've ever seen. So everybody that...
There are some who would complain about that. You know that.
But I will tell you, they have been outstanding to work with, and they have helped facilitate every aspect of this. So I want to thank everybody for their time and opportunity. So
Yeah,
thank
and you
you.
guys came out a
Appreciate
lot
it.
too, so we
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much,
Thank
sir.
you.
Looks like, Brian, you're getting some new lights in front of your building down there. Yeah.
There you go.
Item 8.6, first reading ordinance number 13, 10,673, levying special assessments for the improvements in the Stone Lake addition.
Mr. Stack?
All right, back again for a project that's recently been completed. Stone Lake improvements, east of Ohio, just north of Schilling Road. The old sand pit out there, they have just completed the improvements to put some housing in there as well. The costs have been certified by engineering staff, and a summary of the costs are in the blue sheet. Basically, property owner's share of $1,299,788.34. The city's share is $60,732.18 for a total cost of $1,360,520.52. This project had a unique basically a unique situation where the developers paid for all the improvements, hired the contractors, the city staff, didn't get involved in the bidding process, so they were able to complete that on their time frame, and then basically once those projects are certified and completed, then they come back to us to sell the bonds and then finance, and then we basically pay them back. So they, to make that process go faster, they signed a waiver foregoing their right of formal notice and public hearing before they don't even want to have a public hearing. So they basically have signed that, and that allows us to even have this process move a little quicker. So a calendar of events is attached, and the first reading, if that occurs today, second reading will be next Monday, and then the bond sale will occur on February 11th. And then Rod's going to talk further about the bond sale in the next item. This action sets the assessments to the properties, and so I'll entertain questions at this time.
Any questions of Mr. Stack?
I apologize, but I do have one clarification on this as well. The opportunity for the developer to waive the public hearing process is because they represent 100% of the property ownership. Otherwise, there would be a required public opportunity to speak.
Correct.
Any questions of Mr. Stack? Thank you, Mr. Stack.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'd bring it back to the commission for any discussion and action.
Mayor, I move we approve on first reading ordinance number 13-10673, levying special assessments for the improvements in the Stone Lake addition.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve ordinance number 13-10673. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carried 5-0.
Item 8.7, resolution number 136976, authorizing the offering for public sale of taxable general obligation internal improvement bonds, Series 2013-A.
Mr. Franz.
I feel fortunate to be up here because my left leg is asleep, and I wasn't sure if it was going to fall down. This is the authorization to begin the sale process for the general obligation bonds to pay for the project which you just authorized or just actually completed. A couple of things that are a little bit unusual about this. It seems like we don't have any usual transactions in Salina, but these are taxable bonds, which is not unheard of, but is not frequent, at least not for us. Developers are aware of that. That simply means that the interest that investors earn on the bonds will be taxable, and so they will be at a somewhat higher rate, which of course affects the ultimate assessments. Bonds authorized to be sold are $1,360,000. The vast bulk of that are to be recovered through special assessments. There's a small portion that would be paid from city at large taxes. Those are attributable to a part of a water line that runs through the area and provides, I think it's slightly oversized is what the situation is. There is also a cost recovery portion on the project of about approximately $65,000 that would be paid out of current cash. That is also a water line. And essentially it provides services to some areas that are still agricultural in nature and are not eligible for inclusion within the district. Bond sale will be February 11th with closing, and I must apologize, I don't know the exact closing date, but it's typically within about two weeks of the bond sale. I would, I guess, stand for questions at this point.
Any questions of Mr. Franz? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do I have any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I bring it back to the commission for any discussion and action.
Mayor, I move we approve Resolution 13-6976, authorizing the offering for public sale of general obligation bonds.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve resolution number 13-6976. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carried 5-0.
I move to recess into executive session for 20 minutes to discuss confidential data relating to financial affairs and trade secrets of a corporation for the reason that public discussion of the information would competitively disadvantage the corporation, and an additional 5 minutes for legal matters, and reconvene at 7:25.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn into executive session until 7:25 for matters of trade secret and attorney-client privilege. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried 5-0. We're in executive session.
Welcome to another broadcast